Start here because now this mic is fine, right? Doesn't this work okay? Can you hear me, Eddie? Yeah.
You have to lean over a little bit more than you would have ordinarily.
It's not terrible.
Okay.
But my primary mark, once again, that little bolt came loose and there it went, right? Am I overly aggressive in the way I pull the screw? Is that it?
I mean, it's twice this week, so maybe. Unless somebody's just playing jokes on you.
Well, you see, you're supposed to grab it by the arm up here. You're not supposed to grab it by the mic down here. That's why it keeps breaking.
I always grab it by the mic.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, this is a handle around the microphone. None of this makes sense to people that are listening, but we appreciate the fact that you are. How are you? My name is Jake Query. Jimmy Cook, the other voice you hear in this program, Eddie Garrison, who said, and I quote, when this microphone kind of simply came undone. I mean, it's not broken, but it just came detached.
Loose. All right.
Eddie said, and I quote, I can fix it. He looked around and said, I can fix it. And I thought for sure he was about to tell me that his old man's a television repairman and has the ultimate set of tools. But Eddie, in fact, you know what? You know how you were able to do that, Eddie? Which is odd because of the large size of your cranium. But you just pulled a Kenny Pickett. You were able to fix that because I noticed you have something in common with Kenny Pickett. Eddie was able to put the screw through the little tiny area to put the microphone back together because he's got widow hands.
Negative.
They fit perfectly in there.
It's called strong fingers, Jake.
Okay.
That's what Pickett tried to tell the scouts, but they didn't buy that either.
Sausage fingers are what most people call those, but that's cool. Anyway, it is a Friday. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
How are you, Jake?
Well,
the mic's gone again. 0 for 2. All right, back to mic number 2, as it's just not cooperating with Jake today. It's all right. It's okay.
We're going to turn that one off. This one's back on.
Outside of you seething over the microphone, how's your day been? Good?
I've had a good day. Yeah, it's beautiful outside.
It's spectacular.
Absolutely gorgeous. And there's a lot to talk about. Obviously, the Anthony Richardson story to me is interesting. I know that we come from differing areas on the severity of that, and I respect that. I don't think it's like a major – here's the thing, and we can get into this over the course of the show. I don't think Anthony Richardson's injury and missing practice is a big deal, except that it illuminates other big deals that we've been through in this town with the franchise. Now, I think the Colts, especially in the last handful of years, have usually been pretty transparent with injuries. I know that the narrative is that we like to be skeptical of that. It's just the fact that, I remember Marvin Harrison, for example, at the end of his career. Todd Meyer is looking through the window like
executive
we're
producer
being
Todd
haunted.
Meyer is not happy, I think, with the mic situation.
He looks like Michael Myers. That's what he looks like, not
very
Todd.
much so,
He's just standing, lurking through the door.
He's hitting you with an I'm watching you.
So I remember when Marvin Harrison was at the end of his playing career, and it was a knee injury, I think. And literally every week for 15 straight weeks it was, well, if this is must win, he'd be playing. I'm like, it's the NFL, isn't every week must win? So when I hear the narrative of, no, trust me, if there was a game this week, he'd be out there. That's probably true. And yes, this is probably routine. And there is little reason to think that there's a problem, except for this. And I'll use an Indy 500 analogy, which is weird, I realize, okay? But if you ask drivers that go through for the Indy 500, when they have to go through the rookie orientation, they have to drive the car so many laps at 190 miles an hour, and then so many laps at 210 miles an hour, and so many laps at 220 miles an hour. And when they are driving it at 210 miles an hour, the car's really angry and imbalanced, and it's shaking, and it's vibrating, and it's really hard to control. Because the car is made to get into its comfort zone at like 225. So it's really a handful for the drivers at that speed. And that's why they make them go through that orientation to get them familiar with that, right? Now, the reality is it's supposed to be that way. When you're at 210, it's supposed to be that way. But when it's like sliding around and it's bumpy and it's irritable at 210, the reason the drivers say it's so hard to do is because if the car starts to do that at 240, that's the symptom or the sign that it is about to crash. So even though at 210 it's doing that, and you're like, no, that's part of the process. it is a part of the process. Correct, it's part of the process, but it's making me very uneasy in the car because my mind tells me that when that's happening, I'm about to have a really bad crash. And so I think that when we as football fans, prognosticators, whatever it might be, here when it comes to the Indianapolis Colts, the shoulder is showing some scar or some soreness in the rehabilitation. It's supposed to feel that way. It's supposed to. But we in Indianapolis are more sensitive to that because we know there is precedent of that actually being something that was problematic. Now, with Andrew Luck, it actually became the ankle, not the shoulder, that was the reason he retired. But if you recall, it was because he said, I didn't want to have to go through all of it again because that shoulder kept having like kind of relapse or soreness, and it put in him enough fear that he just said, I'm done with this. I'm not going to do it anymore. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I understand why people think that it is simply what I'm saying.
And it's perfectly fine to have a healthy level of anxiety for all the reasons you outlined about your star quarterback who just had an injury-riddled rookie season. That does not mean that he is going to not be available week one. That doesn't mean people should be panicking and suddenly investing all of their time on 2025 mock drafts for a new quarterback. Nobody's saying that. All we said yesterday was there is a level of extremes you can have when looking at Anthony Richardson. You could be super casual and it's fine. That's to be expected. Not going to worry about it at all.
By the way, Cam is in here, the engineer, and he's looking over. He doesn't have little hands. I think it's becoming a challenge for him with this. But, Cam, I'm curious, now that you're assessing the microphone and the damage that took place not once but twice with me, how much of that was user error and how much of that was that would have been the case for anybody?
And before you answer, think carefully because it could wreck the vibes for the show the rest of the day if Jake is having this weight on his shoulders that he broke the microphone not once but twice.
How much of that's user error, Cam?
I would say it's kind of 50-50 because it could also be the morning show.
Ah, see, well,
It could also, there's a bunch of variables in there.
yeah. So we know. So what you.
Twisting,
So what you're saying is a little bit of soreness within the microphone is common, but an overabundance of use might have caused it to the point where it was on a breaking point. And let me tell you something. Have you seen that? Now you know who uses this microphone in the morning, right?
I do, yeah.
Sweeney, right?
Yes.
Now, have you seen this guy? I mean, I'm just telling you, like. That guy is constantly fidgeting and moving. He's like an amphetamized chipmunk in here.
The point.
So I think we know now what's going on here,
the
right?
point that I was trying to make was that there are two extremes to Anthony Richardson's injury or soreness, if you want to just label it as that. People being super casual about it, and people that are like, I need to start looking at mock drafts. This guy's a bust. It's a waste of a draft pick. We're
Two
doomed.
extremes to the approaches of the people that sit in this chair.
Indeed.
Is that what you're saying?
Indeed. And all I'm saying is it's fine to have a little bit of cautious anxiety about it, even though, again, I have cautious anxiety about it. However, I think he's going to play week one. I think he's going to be fine. All I'm outlining is there's nothing wrong with being a little bit anxious about it because of what you outlined, Jake, the injury history in this market, and additionally the fact that he threw 84 passes in 4 games a season ago. But I think he's going to be fine. I do.
Somebody just asked me, how many games will Joe Flacco start this year? Over, under. Okay. Over, under of Joe Flacco starts in 2024 at 3.5. What are you taking?
Under.
Eddie?
3.5? Oh, boy.
This is solid queryism, isn't it?
I want to take the under just because I want to take the under knowing that Richardson is out there for at least, by your math, 14 games.
And Eddie, I do not want to misrepresent you, so you clarify this if I'm wrong, but as the person yesterday who was the most adamant about he's good, this isn't a big deal, don't worry about it, he's going to be fine, I would have figured you would be the bigger voice of optimism of under for certain because you believe he's going to have a healthy campaign, do you not?
Well, yeah, I want to take the under for sure, but you know, Jimmy, they're going undefeated, so he's not starting in week 18. That's the other part of this year.
But how many games? That's one game.
I know,
right? So,
yeah. I'll take the under.
All right.
So wait a minute. Yesterday we did a Twitter poll on this. I wish I'd have known that because we didn't have enough people vote.
It's still going on.
I understand.
Still an hour left on it. So,
are you worried about Richardson's shoulder being sore? Yes or no? @query_company on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it.
Why don't you give that a retweet, Jake? You've got, I don't know, nearly 37,000 followers that could help.
I didn't know that we were doing that.
Doing what?
I think we're trying to make polls. I think we're trying to make it a daily
trying to make
thing
it a daily thing, yeah.
Oh, I'm all up for that, right?
Yeah.
The always engaging and not yet sponsored poll question of the day. Is
that's
that
right.
what we're doing?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Things where we're at.
Our first one was about our guest coming up at 2:00 about, Bob Sanders being, from our conversation earlier week, one of the more popular Colts from that Super Bowl winning team. He was second on that poll, by the way.
So I am going to, by the way, I think because I appreciate the transparency, I will let everybody know what took place. I don't recall the day that we were scheduled to have Bill Polian on in the 1 o'clock hour. A couple of days ago. Tuesday, maybe? Wednesday?
Tuesday sounds right.
And Bill Polian had said, like, hey, I will call in after 1 o'clock, et cetera, and then we didn't hear from him. And he's always been, especially in his post-career here in Indianapolis, he's always been pretty accessible. Last night we were at my sister's house for my mom's birthday party. Thank you to Andy who brought over a Taylor's Orange Fluff Cake, a Query tradition. And I'm sitting there eating cake, and I look down, and I got a message that said, Jake, I am so sorry. I realized that I completely forgot to call. Something popped up at the last minute, and I got slammed, and that is 100% my fault. If you still need me, I'm happy to do it, or I owe you one for another time. And I said, yeah, today is fine. And he said, perfect. So Bill Polian today to talk about Dallas Clark going into the Ring of Honor and what that, be fun to go back just kind of down memory lane of the acquisition of Dallas Clark. And, they had tight ends that were good players at that time, but he was clearly a difference within their offense. So Dallas Clark in the Ring of Honor and Bill Polian to talk about it 2:00 today. Pat Boylan going to join us at 1 o'clock this afternoon. And it's a Friday Franciscan Health Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday. Got a good story and right down the alley of the kind of stuff that I'm hoping to get you folks to let me know about when you have a feel-good story within your community. Somebody that's an underdog that finally gets their due in sports, or somebody that just simply made you feel good. You can send me those stories, and we will share them as part of the Feel Good Fridays from Franciscan Health. Speaking of Franciscan Health, by the way, they are sponsoring on Thursday, July 18th, the Franciscan Health Fan on the Back Nine Golf Tournament. This is going to be starting at doors opening at 11, but everything getting underway at noon. If you've not been to the Back Nine, it is fabulous. Franciscan Health Foundation is going to benefit from this, and also will have a silent auction going on with sports memorabilia, different experiences in the world of sports. We will be broadcasting live. JMV will be broadcasting live. You can get a bay. You can buy a ticket individually, whatever it may be, rain or shine. This is taking place. Food's going to be there. I think we've got drinks. Jack Daniels is going to be there. Again, everything getting underway at noon, July 18th. That's a Thursday. All of the information at 1075thefan.com. That's 1075thefan.com.
If they said that I was going to be there too, they would have to add the event will take place rain, shine, or shade.
Okay. You're always providing the shade, so I'm going to provide some on you. You ready?
They won't get to see my cranium. That's unfortunate
Well,
for
that
them.
too.
Before you do this, do you feel vindication, Jake, personally, as Kim Blankenship, our engineer, who always does a great job, is struggling with the microphone? Like, it's taking him just as long as it did you. Do you feel vindicated in your ability?
I must admit that it does show a little bit of like, see, I'm telling you. Although it also makes me further question the size of Eddie's hands that he was able to just get in there. And
good point.
It's called finger strength, Jake. That's all it is.
It's your widow hands. On today's show, I didn't think that we were going to mention this, but I'm fascinated by it. The NBA Finals last night, you saw Boston. It looked similar to games with Indiana where, Boston got out big and then that lead is relinquished a little bit. Dallas gets within striking distance, and then the Celtics pull away and secure it, and they go up 1-0. You have the kind of continued speculation as to what might have happened at Purdue that caused one of their more highly anticipated recruits to ask out for and be granted out of his letter of intent, and now goes out into the open recruiting market again. And Kenan Catchings, that happened yesterday. We can discuss that today as well. That is certainly a storyline. And the WNBA continues to be a big talking point. Again, Pat Boylan going to join us with exit interviews finishing up for the Pacers as well. I think Aaron Nesmith was scheduled to go through for his. But I didn't think that we were going to start with this, but I'm fascinated by this. Now, Eddie, can you do me a favor? I don't know if you probably don't have the ability to just quickly filter through like 5 or 6 second snippets of songs, right? Because you'd have to have them all queued up and ready to go.
If you tell me what song you would like, I can
Hey Jude.
try my hardest.
Hey Jude. And he's looking up Hey Jude. That's by the Beatles, by the way, if you're not familiar with.
I thought it was by Justin Bieber.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so Hey Jude, you want to play just a few notes of Hey Jude if you could on the program here. Or I could just sing it if maybe that would be faster. It appears as though that would be a faster.
I had
way
to
do
get
this.
through a 10-second ad.
Do we have we have music stations here, right? Do you have access to their music station? Okay, go ahead and play a few seconds of Hey Jude.
Hey Jude, don't make it bad.
Okay, that's good. And before the show, I learned something today that I did not have on my bingo card. You've never heard that song.
Nope.
He's again, to clarify this, I know I don't want to ruin the game. Eddie has inherently heard it once via cover because it's featured in Ted Lasso, and he's seen all of Ted Lasso. So he's
Twice.
heard the cover of the song, but he's never apparently heard the original Hey Jude. But
Maybe perhaps I don't pay attention to the soundtrack during a show.
it wasn't. It wasn't that. It was they're all sitting there with it's Coach Beard and Ted and his son, and they're singing at a picnic table. Like it's like a big scene within it. It's not like a background song.
Okay, one more song if you could. Go ahead and fire up this one. I'm not going to go through all of these.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead and fire up this one here. I didn't have this on my bingo card, but I was surprised by it on the show today. Now, do we not have access to the music station's log where you can just get into that and fire that? Okay.
So it's all based on the mercy of the internet.
Here we go. This is song number 2 from the Beatles that we're introducing to Eddie.
She loves you, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, you have never heard that song?
Nope.
Okay. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? You'd not heard that one, right? Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. A Day in the Life? Woke up, got out of bed, dragged the comb across my head.
Nope.
Went my way downstairs and had a smoke.
Jake's going to be playing Help on the entire drive home.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you. I don't even know how it came about that, but you need to come over to the house, watch. Was it you who's not seen Good Will Hunting?
I have not seen Good Will Hunting, and neither one of us have seen Shawshank.
Okay. Well, you're going to come over, and we're going to put on the Beatles and watch Good Will Hunting and Shawshank. That is my...
Okay.
That and then also if you could bring Metamucil, because I'm not going to lie to you, I've never felt more old in my life.
Depending on which Beatles album you're going to play for Eddie, he might want to bring some of his Seattle merchandise.
That is true. If it's latter career Beatles, that is correct. What'd you think last night, Jimmy? Game 1, Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks.
I was a little surprised at how easy everything came to Boston, especially in clear situations where they were trying to make Luka Doncic the primary defender. He has been better in the playoffs and better this postseason than the majority of his career defensively. Not to the point that he's an elite defender by any means, but like he had shown strides and improvements, and it's part of the reason, among other things, that the Mavericks got to this point. But he was picked on and bullied a lot last night. That took me by surprise. The inefficiency, which I do not think will continue, but the inefficiency of Kyrie Irving was jarring. And just you're right, Jake, it did have those same feelings of the Pacers series where Dallas kind of creaks back into a game, and Celtics beat reporters and fans on different aspects of social media were mentioning this last night, which is true. If you've watched Boston at all this postseason run, they have moments where they go full tilt, and then like midway through the third, they forget how to play basketball. Like they just stop doing what they're doing, and then inevitably a run happens by the opposition, and then they wake up and they go on that 8-0 run or 11-0 run, and they wind up winning comfortably throughout that. So Dallas and the way Luka was picked on surprised me. Kyrie's inefficiency surprised me. And then I don't know that anybody could have seen, and I've always loved him as a player. I felt like he got a bad rep at times for injuries that he's dealt with in his career and some other superfluous observations around him as a basketball player. Despite all of that, and despite my love for his game, I don't know anybody could have predicted the impact in that first quarter, both offensively and defensively, Kristaps Porzingis had.
Eddie did. Aren't you the one that said he's going to be the series MVP, Eddie?
I said there was an avenue for him to be the series MVP because I felt like going into the series that they had bodies, Dallas, to throw at Jason Tatum. He's been very inefficient as a scorer, and I would feel like he would have to go nuclear to really be their MVP. And if Porzingis came on the floor and he did what he did last night, I think there's an avenue in which he could win the Finals MVP for sure.
I mean, he was insane. 3 blocks, I think all of them came in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. He has 20 points, 11 or 12 of which came in the first? Maybe it was 13? I can't remember the exact mark, but
I don't know. 20 points and 21 minutes is pretty good.
yeah, he was incredible. And his first game back after a month-plus layoff from injury.
I think the thing about Porzingis that if you look over the totality of his career, and yes, I'm not watching him game in, game out, but when he first came into the league, he was such a unicorn and anomaly because of his size and his ability to shoot so well from the outside that then
he was the first European player to get that unicorn label of this
Correct.
era. Of this era
and
of
as a
player.
result of that, he really just kind of hung around the 3-point circle.
Yeah.
And I think now he has been utilized in ways that we were aware of his ability to get to the rim, obviously, but I think when he was in Dallas, for example, they were so used to seeing Dirk Nowitzki that I think that they thought that Porzingis was more just a wing and out player. And I think Boston is using him more as a wing moving inward player. I mean, you see them running plays where he's then slashing into the middle. There's nothing you can do at that point, right? He had one dunk where he then did like a pull-up, and I mean, it looked like something off NBA Jam. And that's where, right then, is when I said, I'm like, this game's over, right?
Yeah, I mean, I give credit to Dallas for hanging around. Like, I don't think, and maybe I'll be dead wrong on this, I don't think this is Boston in 5. Like, I don't think it's a Boston sweep. I think that Dallas is going to make this series competitive, but they have a lot they need to figure out. Not just, Jake, the mismatches they had whenever Luka was the primary defender, but Boston pretty much got every open look that they wanted. We talk so much about the Pacers and how throughout the regular season and the playoffs, but especially that playoff run, how the point of the Pacers offense is to create open looks, especially from 3, and they're going to get high percentage looks more often than not. Boston pretty much had that at will. Any set they were running, any motion they were running, they found the best option and got wide open, high percentage looks, and they were successful. For Dallas, you got to be better defensively, and if Kyrie Irving averages 12 a game in this series, it's curtains. I don't expect that to continue. I think he gets closer to his 23, 24 points a game. He can't be 0 for 5 from 3. I think Dallas is going to clean things up. I still think this is a series that goes 6 or 7. I do, and that's not just the basketball fan of me that wants a good series. I think Dallas is capable of doing that, but they've got a ton of stuff to fix, and if they don't clean it up on both ends of the floor and they continue to allow Boston to get whatever they want at will, this is not going to be a long series.
Listen, I think what we have here before us, I'd just like Cam to weigh in. Cam, are we dealing with a strip nut? We got a strip nut, right? Is that what we got here? That mic doesn't work. You're trying to put it back together. Well, here, you can use this one right here. You can just lean over and talk into this one.
Yeah, I think it is. I thought the threading was a little loose, so I used a trick we have here, nail polish.
Mm-hmm.
Put nail polish on to help the threading out.
I think nail
and then
polish is common when you've got a strip nut problem,
but,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I think it's where we're at now.
okay. So once you do a manicure, then the strip nut's better,
Yep.
right? Okay.
Yeah, most of the time.
See, I knew it wasn't me. Now that we have Todd skulking outside like Michael Myers in the hallway, will you at least let him know that I'm absolved somewhat of totality of blame?
Yes.
Thank you.
I will, yeah.
Thank you.
Cam, do we know how much weight your voice carries? You already. It's okay. It's all right. We'll just assume that it's not enough to fully get Jake the type of reprieve that he would like from this. But you have my voice. You have Eddie's voice too, I think.
Here's what we're doing on the show today. Bill Polian's going to join us at 2 o'clock. Pat Boylan at 1 o'clock. Up next, we have tickets to give away. We will probably do some form of trivia for that. We could do like a Beatles Name That Tune trivia. A little Beatles Name That Tune
But-
trivia. And if you know the Beatles song,
It has to be legitimately under 5 seconds because
I understand.
for the stuff we've outlined, but also the Beatles themselves are near instant copyright.
Okay, I understand.
So we got to be quick with that if we're doing it.
Or I could simply name the song, and then the person has to sing a few bars to make it known that they've heard the song. Can we bounce back with songs from the Beatles today? Can we do that?
That sounds good to me.
And then see if Eddie's heard of them or not?
I also like that game.
Jimmy, I'll give you credit. You'd heard of most of them, right?
Yes. Love the Beatles.
They are great.
I told you
Rolling
I'm not a
along
big
on-
band
what's
guy.
that?
I'm not a big band guy, but I mean I love the Beatles. Like
Well, did you see the movie, what was it called, Yesterday's? What was the movie
No,
that was just out?
the one about the guy that everybody forgot about the Beatles?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
see it, but I know what you're talking
it's
about.
great.
Yes.
I can't remember what it was called, but
Yeah.
it was great. You guys should, that's what we should watch together. But Eddie would have no idea what's going on in
A
it.
double feature with that and Shawshank.
Well, except for the entire Beatles movie. Eddie's like, I don't understand. I'm just like the people in the movie that have never heard of the Beatles. Square and Company on a Friday.
The laundry room. For as long as I can remember.
Got to turn the right mic on over there.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So we have tickets to give away. Not tickets to ride, but tickets to see swimming. Taking place right now, as a matter of fact, at Lucas Oil Stadium, which is extremely cool. We have a 4-pack of tickets to give away to the Olympic swim trials, the final round of it on June 16th. And we will give away that quartet here in just a second. Eddie, since we're playing Beatles songs as re-entries, I will let you simply give me a ding or a buzz with each one of them, whether you have heard it before or it's a song with which you're familiar. We start there with Ticket to Ride. Eddie Garrison, your vote is?
I'll tell you what, though, Jake. A lot of people don't know this, but if you're going to the swim trials, and it's very competitive, incredibly fast swimming, faster than the Yellow Submarine, one might
That's
say.
right. That is exactly correct.
Yep.
That is a song, Eddie, Yellow Submarine.
Yay! On the board.
There we go. Thank goodness. Who are we going with here in terms of our ticket giveaway? Are we doing trivia or we're doing trivia, correct?
Yep.
We doing show trivia or sports trivia?
Again, we should leave it up to the listener.
Okay, we have I will let you pick which of the three that we are going with
It's
here.
good for the heart parlay, so good, Jimmy.
Jimmy, what's up?
Hey, what's up, guys? How we doing?
You know, we can't complain. Yourself, what'd you think of the end of the Pacers season? I know you were disappointed, but now that you've had time to settle on it, you feeling good about things?
I am feeling good about things, especially after I see how Boston just completely dominated Dallas last night. But Jake, first off, I wanted to tell you I'm going to be in Elkhart Lake this weekend.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, but I'm not actually going to the race. We our family vacations in Elkhart Lake each summer. Well, I take that back. We might actually go around the track, but we vacation on that lake every summer.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Now,
So,
when are you driving up?
I'm driving up tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So, yep,
All right. Well, if you get near the racetrack, then let me know.
I will. I hope you have a great call of the race.
I'll try to. It should be a good race. It's a great track, and it's a ton of people go up there for it, so it should be fun. Jimmy, would you like sports trivia or would you like show trivia?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'll go with sports trivia.
Jimmy, I will let you come up with the question for good Jimmy.
Oh, man. Okay, Jimmy, how many – this is – I'm going off board, and it's going to be a tough one, so I apologize, but it's what I had up. How many points did Pascal Siakam have in the final game of the Pacers season?
I mean, come on.
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry. You put me on the spot. That's what I had in front of me.
Jimmy, the Dallas Mavericks are trying to win the NBA title for the second time in their franchise history. Who did they defeat for their first?
The Miami Heat.
There we go. There we go. Jimmy gets the tickets. How many for Siakam, I'll say 17.
19.
Okay. You should have, like, within 5 is
The
what we should've gone
easy,
with them, right?
the easiest question I could have asked from that would have been what we already discussed that everybody knows, which is how many games did the Celtics beat the Pacers in. I wanted to make it about the Pacers last game, but that felt too easy. So
Okay, how about this? So that leads to
Wait,
another
who
question.
led the Pacers in scoring that game? Would that have been a better one? I don't think so. I think that would have been just as tough.
In the final game of the season, who
Yes.
led the Pacers in scoring? I would go with Halliburton did not play, right?
Correct.
I would. Was it Nimhard was the big star in 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's not, I mean,
It's one of
I could
two
answer
here.
it without hesitation. And I could tell you how many points he had.
Okay, go ahead.
Nemhard with 24.
That's correct.
It was Nimhard again. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
They all run together to me after a while, admittedly. I will admit to that.
Admittedly, that was an insanely tough question, and I love Jimmy, so I apologize that that's where I was. But as you say, Jake, the show ends at 3. We had to work rapid fire. What was there?
Okay. Higher number of games. The number of games that the NBA Finals goes, or the number of games that Anthony Richardson misses?
The number of games the NBA Finals goes.
I think that's probably true. I mean, I would think Richardson. I do think that there are going to be occasions where Joe Flacco is on the field. And you like that. I mean, at least with Joe Flacco, the thing about Joe Flacco, this is another queryism. I have 3 of them.
All trademarked, so don't try it.
That's right. We have the TJ Maxx contract, right? You're aware of that.
That's a recent one. I really like that one, right? That's a recent development.
We have the 2025 guy.
Mm-hmm.
For those unfamiliar, the TJ Maxx contract is a guy that he gets a max contract because he looks like a max player, feels like a max player, and it's a max situation. And then after like 2 years, you realize that there were reasons that he was available for a max contract, and it's a TJ Maxx contract. Looks the same, feels the same, but there are a couple of reasons why it was available. Kyle Kuzma, perfect TJ Maxx contract.
Kyle Kuzma fits a lot of these.
He's also a 2025 guy. Okay. Another of my queryisms that I came up with several years ago, and I've used it on this show. I've used it in the morning show and everything else. Joe Flacco is absolutely the definition of this.
Oh, yeah.
A donut tire.
Bingo.
Yep.
Backup quarterback is a donut tire. Perfectly sufficient to get you through to the next stop.
Happy National Donut Day.
That's right. They had donuts here, didn't they?
I believe there was some on the circle. I saw Jack's Donuts.
Yes, there were some in the building on the
Food
fifth
truck?
floor.
You know, there's a lot to love about Jack's Donuts. It goes without saying. One of them is the Pacers radio, the voice of the Pacers radio commercials.
That guy's
Quack
great.
Daddy Donuts, by
That
the
guy-
way,
that
in
guy-
Westfield,
Yeah, the guy you're talking about is great. He does a good job.
the best.
He doesn't outperform the saxophone in that commercial,
That's right.
but he does a good job.
Quack Daddy Donuts is great in Westfield because if you're going to Colts, it's right there by Grand Park. So if you're going up to watch the Colts, you can go there, and they've got fantastic donuts of
I've driven by that a time or two, but never gone into
different
good stuff.
variations. Oh,
Delicious.
yes.
Good stuff?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
great.
All right.
They're great.
Okay.
And their coffee's great, too. It's
Coffee.
works perfectly. Excuse me?
Coffee.
What about chai tea? Do they have that, Eddie?
I don't think they have the chai tea.
See? Eddie. Now, Eddie, here's the thing.
Eddie, you can't say coffee like that until you've seen Good Will Hunting. I'm sorry. I have to ban you.
I
from-
could say whatever I want, how I
All
want.
right.
Jake.
Well, I'm
Jimmy.
just saying, man. It's disrespectful to the Boston community.
Joe Flacco, donut tire, though. Perfectly sufficient if
Yeah.
they need him for 3 or 4 games. But outside of that, you start to realize why it's the spare, right?
Yes.
And I think we saw in Cleveland that he still has it in him, but there is a very clear ceiling,
Yes.
right?
And
Very
there's clear how many miles you have left on said tire. Yes. It can get done in small spurts. I always, I don't have a nice tagline trademarked thing like queryisms, but I always go by the best if benched by, kind of like milk. Like at some point you need to bench said quarterback or it's going to turn sour. You get that.
Speaking of
certain-
turning sour, we were supposed to do a beer taste test today to check out the
Yeah,
longevity of
I
it, right?
know.
Yep.
It's on me. I let everybody down.
And I believe it was your idea, right? To bring up because you brought it up with Mr. Joel Erickson by asking him if
I
it
did.
was.
I did ask him about how long the shelf life was of Spotted Cow, the beer that's exclusive to Wisconsin. To which he told us that he couldn't answer that because he usually finishes them well before they would have any time to expire. And I don't remember if it was me that specifically brought it up that we should do that. But either way, I wear the L. I forgot my portion of the Spotted Cow, which has been in my fridge since September of 22, forgot it out the door today, and that's on me. I apologize. If we can, I'd like to do it next week because it sounded like a fun exercise, and I will give credit. Eddie Garrison, for once, and this is crazy for this show, was the responsible one. He brought his.
Oh, I'm always the responsible one. I wasn't too busy going through my closet to figure out which Yankee shirt to wear today.
Oh, okay. All right, well, I decided that the night before, so thanks for that.
This is like millennial on millennial crime. Or actually, am I the millennial or are you guys? I'm Generation X, right?
I think so. We are millennials. People will
You
debate.
might be Generation Z, right?
No, people will debate Eddie's cutoff line because where he was born, 95 is cleanly millennials. We are not a part of the Gen Z.
So it goes
conversation.
well. Okay, so hold on.
I am Gen Z.
So you got the baby boomers, right?
Yes.
Then after the baby boomers came what?
Jimmy, you are Generation Y.
No. Look it up. Go to
Believe-
millennials
believe me-
page.
Believe me, I say that all the time. Okay.
They're also known as millennials.
Thank you.
So wait a minute. What other you got the baby boomers, right?
Yeah, here you go. So you go baby boomers, and then you go Gen X, and then you go millennials / Gen Y, and then you go Zoomers / Gen Z,
Zoomers.
and then you go
That'd be me.
then you go Generation Alpha.
Eddie, I've got news for you. I've had pets that get the zoomies. You are definitely not a zoomer, just so you know. Unless you get up and start randomly sprinting around in circles and asking to go outside the studio 56 times in an hour, you are definitely not a zoomer.
Well, you should see me at night then, Jake.
You're constantly running around and going outside, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, Generation X is what year to what year?
So this is a point of contention among a lot of people. So I'm just going to go off of what Wikipedia cites here, which is always reliable, and you can believe anything
Yeah,
you want on the
it's
internet.
all knowing. That's right.
You asked for Generation X. Is that what you asked for the
Yes.
years on? 1965 to 1980.
Boom. I could not, that's Generation X, right?
For this particular graphic, yes. There's some people that'll say it extends a little bit, give or take. But
It's funny though, because I remember when I was in my mid 20s to early 30s, which was the first time that I really started, to be honest with you, the grunge era and the grunge music and the whole Seattle movement era of 1992, 3, 4, and 5. Everything in Seattle was suddenly cool. You know, all of a sudden, like, everybody's wearing flannels and hiking boots and growing their hair out and listening to Nirvana and Pearl Jam, and the movie Singles is out, and everything that's cool takes place in Seattle. And that was the first time that I started hearing reference on a regular basis to Generation X. It's almost like that was when it was labeled. And I'm sure it probably had been around since 1965, but I had never really heard that labeling until maybe just because I was then for the first time cognitively aware of labels and that sort of thing. And other people of my age range can either back me up on this or tell me that this was my own, like, mind dropping. But it seemed to me like the Generation X label in that time period had negative connotation. It was like, oh, these Generation X people, doesn't
it always?
Kind of, yeah, right? Like,
It happens. It's happened with my generation.
They're lazier. They don't do anything.
Yeah,
Correct.
yes.
Look at them. They're walking around wearing hiking boots and flannels and long hair.
Everybody gets to be the young, ignorant generation. Everybody gets to be the old man yelling at clouds.
That's
Tale as
fair.
old as time.
I did
That's what
see
happens.
yesterday, though, and this was surprising to me. I saw yesterday, and who knows how accurate it was, that there was a survey done, I think it might have been Forbes or one of those, of businesses in the United States that said that 19% of college graduates during a job interview did what? And I'm like, let me read that again. 19% let me rephrase that, of the people that they surveyed, okay, that were business executives that are hiring young people, they said, what's the thing that most bothers you or that you see that surprises you in interviews? And 19% of the respondents said, I have encountered what?
Somebody drinking chai tea.
That is a good guess.
Okay.
But I'll give you the right one on the other side.
DQ presents How to Enjoy the 3 Best
It is Introduce Eddie to the Beatles Day today. So with each song, we bounce back with a Beatles tune, and then Eddie tells us via buzzer or ding whether or not he has previously heard said song. Eddie, for Come Together, your vote is?
All right.
19% of those that were surveyed about millennial job interviews or people right out of college. So that would be millennial right now, or somebody right out of college right now is what generation?
It would be Generation Z, right? Because that's still in the time frame. Because 2012 is the cutoff for Wikipedia of Eddie's generation.
19% of people that they surveyed said that people come together to the interview with their parents.
Really?
What? I find that not surprising at all. And that makes me old guy yelling at class.
Now, is this because they don't
I'm
have
shocked by that,
they don't have
genuinely.
a license, or just they bring the parents?
I think one of the things to me that is, and I don't think this applies to you guys, but and I get it. I mean, look, Father Time's undefeated. I mean, things just change. Things evolve. I get it. Back in my day. I mean, I feel like I'm saying that, right? But like, we walked uphill both ways. But
It's a little Clinton in that.
I did not have with that woman. My nut was not stripped by that nail polish.
All right, okay.
So, but I'm telling you, I knew you could name any of my friends right now, and I can tell you what their car was in high school. I knew what they drove.
Derek Schultz.
Well, like I said, friends. I said. I also knew, we knew when everyone's 16th birthday plus 1 month was, because that's when you got your driver's license, and it was a thing. Oh man, did you hear? The only person I knew that failed their driver's license test, and I felt bad for him. It was a big thing. He was 2 years older than I, and I'm going to call him out here. Tony Barbie, who's now the head basketball coach at Central Michigan, and went and played for Calipari at UMass. Tony Barbie, I remember, it was like, tomorrow's day is Barbie. He gets his license. And he failed the parallel parking part. So he had to wait like a week or something, whatever, and go back and get his license. But I mean, it was a thing to know when everybody got their license. And that's just not a thing anymore.
I think you have a better memory than I do in a lot of areas, Jake. I couldn't recall the exact date to this day, but it still was a big deal of,
totally.
Colin's getting his license today. That's
Totally.
really cool. That was still a big thing for my generation, but I don't know if I could pinpoint when it happened.
I feel like it kind of shifted with my generation, because there was a lot of kids in my age that personally didn't care to get their license immediately, and their parents also didn't want them to get their license immediately when they became of age to go take the driver's test for a variety of reasons.
I think FaceTime and that kind of stuff has, and just the way that social interactions take place today versus before. I mean, now, I was with my dad last night, and we were going to my mom. We were going to my sister's for my mom's birthday party, and so we had to coordinate, getting everybody there, whatever else. And my dad's the one that said to me, he's like, "Man, don't you wonder?" And my dad was a salesman. He was an over-the-road salesman. And he's like, "Don't you wonder how we lived without cell phones?" I'm like, "I know. I mean, even though it was for, whatever. I mean, 70% of my life." But in high school, so much of the social life when you're in high school on the weekends revolved around, I always say you had group 1, group 2, and group 3. Group 1 was like the group that you originally started out in the car with at somebody's house, and then you went to a second person's house and met up with a second group. And then you went to Burger King, found out whose parents were out of town and who was having a party or whatever, and then you show up at that person's house where group 3 is there, which is everybody else. But all of it was epicentered around groups of kids in the same car. And now, of course, I think kids, so much of their free time is spent playing online or FaceTime video games where they don't have to do the gathering in the same spot in order to socially interact with one another. And so the necessity, the need, the desire, the thirst for a car, while that's foreign to me, I can see why that takes place. But I would still think that any kid would be like, "Man, I want to be able to get a car just to go do what I
I wonder
want.
how much is overprotective parents as well.
Oh, are you kidding me? They used to have helicopter
I know,
parents.
I
Now
know.
it's Velcro parents. You kidding me? Holy cow! I mean, yeah, that's
Little
a whole
Tommy,
different
sorry,
talk
you
show.
got to wait another 2 years before you get that license.
I mean,
We've seen you on the bicycle.
that would be, to your point, like the job interview and the parent thing. I mean, that's more of a parent issue than a kid issue.
And part of it too is like there's construction all over the place now, and there's maniacs on the road. So it's like you've got construction and maniacs. I don't think I want my 18-year-old kid out there on the
have
road.
you driven? Have
Why'd you
driven
look at
lately?
me, by the way?
Oh, just because of the phone calls that we have frequently with you in the
Now,
car.
Okay, two things real quick, and then we're going to move along, and Pat Boylan's going to join us top of the hour. Two things real quick I will say. 96 in Allisonville, back when they had that, they thought was a Michigan left, and I said forever, this is the dumbest thing ever. It's a total
Yes.
waste. It's making everybody mad, and people are like, you don't know what you're talking about. And guess what? 5 years later now, orange barrels everywhere because they're redoing that whole thing because they realized that was a complete disaster. Secondly, I don't understand this. If you're going south on Capitol and you turn left onto Washington Street, okay?
Yep.
When you turn left, the far left lane is the left turn lane if you then want to go north on Illinois.
Mhm.
But the lane before that is a bus-only lane. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to get in the turn lane if I can't cross through the bus-only lane?
Well, did you know that if it's striped, then cars can be in it? If it's just solid red or whatever it is, it's bus
I think
only.
that's a solid red, though.
Most
part of
people, by the way, don't care. They just
part of
go
it,
on the
part of
bus
it
lane
is
anyway.
striped for you to cross over.
Don't
because
do
I know
that, by the
exactly
way.
what
Okay.
you're talking about.
So here's my last one.
Don't go in the bus lane. Don't do
And
it.
people can literally, we could have the Department of Transportation director call in, and it's still not going to make any sense to me. And hear me out when I ask this real quick. What is the point of a red arrow?
Well, if you want me to say what I think the point of it would be
Yes.
to make you not turn anymore. It's like another stop sign, but it's in a turn only lane. It's
And you can't
redundant.
turn
though.
on. No turn on red.
Okay, bingo. So for years we've always just had no turn on red.
Sure, right.
So what is the point of a red arrow? It's redundant, right?
Yes.
Well, people still turn on red even if there is just a sign.
Well, then they're going to turn on red if there's a red arrow. I mean, a red arrow is
Bingo.
even more confusing because you're like, well, there's an arrow pointing for me to turn. I must be able to turn on it because it's red.
Usually there's also an extra sign there that says only turn on green or yellow when flashing, like yield when yellow's flashing.
That sign is a one size fits all with
Yes.
no turn on red.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You know that you can turn. Everybody knows you can turn on a green or on yellow technically, but if it says no turn on red, what is the point of a red? I don't understand the point of a red arrow. Why do some have them and some don't? Just put up no turn on red.
You know what I like to think? I'd like to think there's somebody that is in the company that designs the traffic lights and they enjoy aesthetically pleasing things and they sat down, you know what? I don't like that red blob that's at the top of this arrow light. I want a red arrow. I want this to be
that's what it feels
just
like.
perfectly aesthetically pleasing.
They've had them in California forever, and then all of a sudden they infiltrated here, and I'm like, what are we doing here? I'm not a road scholar. It took me 34 years to pass algebra, but I still don't know what the difference between a red arrow and a regular red that simply says no turn on red is.
I would think they're the same.
I mean, there's a green arrow, but that's in the green blob.
Right.
Maybe perhaps it's also to remind people this is a turn only lane.
Could be too, because you have people that try to get in the turn only lane and they're like, oops, this is not where I'm supposed to be, and they cut you off and go straight.
But
Almost had my mirror taken off because of that yesterday.
Almost had your mirror taken off.
Yes.
Almost. Okay.
a turn only lane, though, still all you need is a sign that says no turn on red. Turn only, no turn on red. I don't know. These are the things that keep me awake at night. That and other songs by the Beatles that Eddie doesn't know.
If you're talking about it.
Caitlin Clark and the
Okay, Eddie Garrison. Not familiar with "We Can Work It Out" by the Beatles, right? So far we what, 2 for 4? You did not know. You didn't know "Hey Jude," right?
Nope.
You didn't know
Ticket to Ride.
"Ticket to Ride."
Nope.
He did know Yellow Submarine, even though he didn't
Yep.
play that. We brought it up.
You knew "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds" or no?
Nope.
Did not.
Okay.
Come Together, yes. So I think 2 for 5.
"Let It Be."
Yes.
And then what about, you didn't know "I Want to Hold Your Hand," right?
Yeah. I know that one.
Okay.
I thought that was one you said earlier you didn't, but we said a lot of Beatles songs, so I don't really remember.
No, we didn't mention that one.
What about "She Loves You"?
That was the one we brought up that he didn't know.
No.
That's what it was.
You didn't know "She Loves You." Okay.
No.
Joining us now on the CarX Tire and Auto Guest line, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so based on that segue. He, of course, is a member of the Pacers radio network, Fever as well. Pat Boylan joins us. Pat, how are you?
I'm doing well. You can catch gaps in my pop culture knowledge for sure, but fortunately, I checked all those boxes.
Yeah. Okay. I would. You're a sophisticated guy, right? You're a cultured.
Not really.
I'm not saying
Sometimes
Eddie's
like to
not.
blame one on TV,
Right.
but
That's right. I'm going to give you your choice: Pacers or Fever. You'd like to start with which?
Fever play tonight. Let's start there.
Okay, let's start there, actually, in terms of, and I know this is kind of weird, I'm going to segue away from a little bit the Caitlin Clark drama, fouls, physical play conversation, which has dominated sports talk, and simply ask you this, and that is the acclimation period, the style of play that they have used in incorporating as she has gotten more comfortable from a playing standpoint and they have become more familiar with her. Are they doing things differently, or are they simply still trying to figure out exactly kind of who and what they're going to be?
You know, I think it's a question that Debbie Antonelli, who's our color analyst and has done Fever basketball for a long time, could probably give you a much better in-depth answer on, and it's something that she has discussed, and I have listened to what she has said, and in general, the feeling from her still seems to be that they are in a feeling out process. And look, I know nobody wants to hear schedule this, schedule that. It doesn't make interesting conversation. But I think one of the real challenges the Fever have faced early in this season, and now this is different this week, but in the first 20 days, first 11 games, I think there were 1 or maybe 2 practices. So there just wasn't time because they were playing so constantly. And with a couple of back-to-backs, and they played 5 more games than some teams during that stretch, there just wasn't time to, I think, institute really any significant changes. I think they all had to be watching video and making some tweaks. And so, in general, I think they're still kind of in the feeling-out process about what works for her. And a lot of this, despite the fact that her game specifically, of course, doesn't really change all that much. She is who she is and plays how she does. The WNBA defenses are different. The way they're targeting her from a defensive perspective, I don't mean necessarily the Kennedy Carter stuff, but the way that they are targeting her from a defensive perspective is unlike in a lot of ways, I think, what she's seen at Iowa, and then trying to work through all of that and find out what works best for her and the rest of the players, I think is a real challenge. And so they're coming into a period today where they're in D.C. now. The game's on Ion, so we're not doing it. But they're coming into this game with 4 straight days between games, which I thought was really pivotal. They just looked like they ran completely out of gas in New York on Sunday. Their legs just weren't there. It was a back-to-back in the 11th game in 20 days, and I think this team needed a physical reset, a mental reset, but to do probably a lot of the things you're talking about, take the 11 games worth of evidence and then try to, make some changes in practice. They got some real practice time for the first time. So I'll be really interested to see how this team looks tonight and going forward, both from an adjustments perspective, but also they just get a normal WNBA schedule from here on out. There are tough games. There are less tough games. There are road games. There are home games. There's a normal amount of games between days between games, whereas none of that was really true in the beginning. So I think this will be a really much fairer test of where this team is here the month of June and really continuing on throughout the rest of the year.
Pat, the sport itself, Pat Boylan is our guest TV voice of the Indiana Fever. The coverage itself for the WNBA, at least from, I don't watch a ton of the early morning shows, but generally it's how did the Cowboys do eating at Subway the other day, right? Like, at least that's what it feels like around this time of year. You don't get a ton of cross coverage, certainly not the way the W has been talked about and featured as headline news and headline on debate shows the last couple of weeks. And if you were a casual that was just watching those and occasionally flipping through to catch a Fever game, you might think that given the way the Kennedy Carter situation and Caitlin getting bullied a time or two, that she was struggling. She had 17 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists last month. You tweeted this out. No rookie in WNBA history has put up those numbers. It was good enough to get her Rookie of the Month honors in the WNBA. Is that for her and the coverage about this team? Do performances like that do enough to shift the narrative where it's less negative in the way she's getting attacked sometimes or defended more aggressively? Or does that type of narrative shift only come when they start winning at a high level?
Well, it's a good question, and I think there's a lot of pieces at play there. I think probably all of it has to come together before you'll stop all of this conversation from happening. But I think it's extremely important to consider the context here, which I just went through the schedule, and they played 7 of the likely top 4 teams this year in their first 11 games, and that's a challenge in of itself. Michael Vopel at ESPN had a terrific nugget about how Caitlin has been blitzed. So when you're coming off the screen, when both the player guarding you and the player on the screener, the defender, both jump out and kind of trap you, that's a blitz. Caitlin's experienced more of those than any other team has in the WNBA, and they can look that up through Second Spectrum and all their analytics now. So it's a crazy number, and it just shows what defenses are throwing at her. So the strength of schedule has been really tough. The amount of games in however many days has been very tough. Just jumping from college to the pros at any level is tough. And yet she's still putting up the numbers that you just said. New York maybe brings the averages down just a little bit. That was a tough game for her. But if this is as low as things ever are, I mean, she's 4th in the league in assists right now. She's top 15 or so in scoring. The turnovers will come down with time. The efficiency will go up with time. You know, I see a lot of, Peyton Manning comparisons in all of this, and that we all remember his rookie year. The team went 3-13. Hopefully the Fever don't have that similar of a record, but it is important to note that oftentimes teams with the number 1 pick are not contending for championships right away. He made a ton of great plays, and you could see the flashes and the brilliance and the touchdowns and all of that, but he also has the interceptions record for a rookie. And so I think that's a good parallel with what you're seeing with Caitlin Clark, which is you're seeing all these moments of brilliance. And then, of course, for Peyton, as time went on and he adjusted, and Caitlin's very cerebral and intelligent too, the turnovers come down, the playmaking goes up. And if the bottom for her is where she is now, I think it's important to note that she's still at a really, really good level here right out of the gates. And I do think it'll probably take the team starting to win consistently before some of the chatter dies down. But frankly, I don't even understand a lot of the chatter that's happened in the last couple of days. So I don't know that I totally know how to answer for some of those people, other than just it's been a little exhausting, a little mind-numbing in some cases. And the last point I kind of want to make on that is just Caitlin has made 0 missteps, at least since I've seen her since she's gotten here. She's extremely well-spoken. She's extremely poised. She takes the high road every single time, and yet she finds herself in the crossfire of this debate. And it's exhausting for me to be on the periphery of it. I can't imagine being in her shoes and the mental weight that comes with that. Fortunately for her, she's a lot mentally stronger than I am. But I just think back to the fact that she didn't ask for any of this. She didn't really play a role in any of this, and yet here's where things are. And I know a lot of that comes with being a superstar in a big spotlight, but it's a lot, to carry for a 22-year-old, and the way that she's carried it so far, I think, is as impressive as anything I've seen her do on a basketball floor.
Is there any evidence, Pat, that the league may be faster or more aggressive than Caitlin Clark is capable of continuing at her level of play throughout it? Does that make sense?
It does. I don't think so, but I think there absolutely is an adjustment. I think there's figuring out exactly how your game works and the different ways in which you can have that level of success. Is she going to put up the 34 a game or whatever she put up at Iowa? No. That's just going to be impossible probably at the WNBA level. But she's smart. She's an incredible shooter. Because of that range, it allows her, to dribble by people. And I just think it's a figuring out process. But I've seen nothing that suggests that if you were really high on Caitlin Clark going in and who wasn't and thought she could be a generational talent, to me there's been nothing that I've seen that would suggest that you should think otherwise 11 games in.
Jimmy, we just don't know which generational talent it is. Is it? Did you say it's the Y generation? Is that right? Millennial? X? It's millennial, right? Would it be the millennial generation?
For Caitlin Clark's generation, I believe it would be in the millennial category. It's either that or she's with Eddie over in Gen Y.
I don't know if her parents came to the workout or not.
Or not Gen Y, Gen Z. My fault. Sorry.
Hey, Pat, let's shift to the Pacers. They're still conducting, and maybe I read this incorrectly. Are they still kind of wrapping up, just exit interviews and guys being around, or is everybody basically on about doing their own thing at this point? And now that the dust is kind of settled, what do you look back on in terms of their season?
Yeah, I think the exit interview process is complete. They've started the draft prospect process, and so guys, many of them still are likely around. But in terms of, I guess drawing a line in the sand that the season is over, it's certainly there. And so I obviously look back at a year where if you would have said going into it that you're going to make the in-season tournament championship, that you're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals, I would have said, well, how did you manage to trade for Kevin Durant or something like that? Just because that would have seemed so improbable at the beginning of the year. And we know the circumstances that, led to that. They did catch a little bit of injury luck. Then in the conference finals, the flip happened. But to have that type of success this year, I think, is just a massive step in the right direction and building block for the franchise. And I think of guys like Andrew Nembhard and, of course, Tyrese Halliburton and these younger players that are growing and developing. Unfortunately, Benedict Mathurin didn't really get to be a part of this due to his injury. But, think about everything that Andrew Nembhard gained by going through all of that, the big shot against New York, trying to guard Lillard and then Brunson and then whichever guy he was on in that Boston backcourt. I mean, in terms of learning by experience, I think it's possible, if not probable, that he learned more over a month and a half period than maybe he has in a season in his brief NBA career. So that's the hope, I think, anyway, is that, look, you come back into next year and getting to the Eastern Conference Finals would be a real challenge if there's health around the league. Philadelphia is really good. Milwaukee's really good. The Knicks are, of course, good. So it's far, far, far from a sure thing that you could get back there. But the benefit that you take from it, they can't take that from you. And I think the message from Carlisle to the front office is we're thrilled. We are a step or two ahead of where we thought we would be at this point, but that doesn't mean that we are not going to stay aggressive in terms of building the type of roster that can win a championship, because I think two things are true. This team is ahead of schedule. This team had a wildly successful season. You made a big step in terms of getting that championship caliber roster by bringing in Pascal Siakam and hopefully signing him up here long term, which I think is the first thing that you try to lock down. But at the same time, is this a team right now that is winning a championship? Probably not. So I think you continue to build in that direction. But you've got some terrific pieces in place, and I think the ability to make those moves here in the coming years, it becomes a fascinating offseason, starting with that Pascal Siakam deal.
Pat Boylan is our guest. You know him as the play-by-play voice of the WNBA's Indiana Fever, as well as hearing him on these very airwaves on the Pacers radio network throughout the course of the Pacers season. Pat, 2 years ago, there was a level of importance, and I believe the word critical was thrown around the verbiage of the offseason for the Pacers of where they were headed from a directional standpoint for the franchise. You still had a top 10 pick selection in the 2022 draft that you ultimately used to take Benedict Mathurin. Many of us on these airwaves, myself included, a massive fan of that pick, and you alluded to it a little bit in your last answer, that he was robbed of being able to have a full playoff development year since he was sidelined due to injury. But you'll have him next year, and you know that the primary goal is retaining Pascal Siakam and another year forward for Tyrese Halliburton, so on and so forth. Last year, it was more of a, setting the table for injuries plagued us a year ago. We're ready to be a year better. Be patient with us, but we're confident in this group. We feel like this is a playoff, not a play-in team. How would you describe this off-season for the Pacers in terms of where the mindset is, if it's a transformative off-season year, if it's a development off-season year, an aggressive off-season year? Where is the label for them going into this off-season? And I realize I undercut part of your answer because, of course, retaining Pascal Siakam's at the top of that list.
Yeah. And I think that's where you start. And if you can get Pascal Siakam signed long-term, then you have successfully accomplished pairing a long-term star with the one that you already have in Tyrese Halliburton. I think as long as you can get that done, which I think signs are pointing in the right direction, there seems to be confidence from both ends. But again, until the dotted line officially has a signature on it, it's never a done deal. I think once you get that done, then the front office is in my opinion, kind of a position of power here, because you've got a team where, if you run it back, just had a lot of success and did so without having Benedict Mathurin in available later in the season, and the ability to continue to develop for guys like Nembhard in larger roles and Mathurin in larger roles, and hopefully, carving out a role for Jarris Walker, albeit I think he still had a lot of development last year working with the Mad Ants and in practice and his spot minutes in the rotation. So I think if you get Siakam signed and bring everybody back, that's considered, in my opinion, at least success. But I think the front office is in a position of power because you can do that and feel confident about where you are headed into next year, because the player development and growth alone could put you in a really good spot. And you don't want to necessarily risk giving up on somebody too early that could turn into another star. But at the same time, Kevin Pritchard's never been shy about wanting to go big game hunting. And, I don't know all the tax ramifications and the cap ramifications and all of that. But if the right player came available, Kevin Pritchard has only previously talked about being aggressive in those type of scenarios too. So I think it's one of those where you don't force anything. I think that's probably the big key, is you like where you are and you don't want to force something that, could backfire if it didn't work out. It's got to be the right type of move that comes to you. As long as they get Siakam re-signed, that's a fantastic example. They got him for pennies on the dollar versus what Siakam would have been if he had, say, 3 or 4 more years under his contract. The Pacers would have probably had to give up a lot more for him in that scenario. So I think you still be aggressive and you look at it as we don't have to force ourselves into any sort of situation. And we're comfortable because of the young players we have and the development we hope to see from Halliburton and Nembhard and Nesmith and Mathurin and Walker, combined with the veterans like Siakam and Turner, that you'd like where you are in that scenario. But I do think over the next 15, 16 months, I do think that this will be a really key time in terms of building the type of championship contender that this franchise feels like it can get to. I just don't know that it has to happen here in the next couple of months necessarily.
Pat, let me give you 2 guys of Pacers past, and then you'll see why I'm presenting them. Jeff Foster didn't play a lot as a rookie. That was situational. Once he got onto the floor, became a long-term guy that brought something to the table that was unique that he brought. George McLeod didn't play a lot. Well, I take that back. George McLeod did play a lot as a rookie, fell out of favor, didn't get minutes, looked like a complete bust, was traded away, and then elsewhere reinvented himself because they realized he was a little bit misused in Indiana. Jarris Walker, more likely than not, after a year where he did not play, is which one?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I think for him, he's somebody that the franchise still very highly values. And I think maybe one of the differences and where the parallels there are tough is you had a lot more rigid and lack of position flexibility in those eras than you do now. So you could look at it and say, well, if you sign Pascal Siakam long-term, there's your long-term 4. But at the end of the day, I think Walker just needs to get minutes and needs the opportunity to play at an NBA level and for them to see where he is. So I certainly lean on the Foster side in terms of being impactful, but I think at the same time, Walker's ceiling is a lot higher than that. And that's not to denigrate anything Jeff Foster did, who I think most players would love to have that type of career. And there's no guarantee that Walker gets to that level. But the raw skill set he has, the defensive versatility, I mean, I think they're confident this guy could guard 2 through 5 defensively, and that he can be kind of an interchangeable, versatile offensive player as well, that you don't necessarily have to say, well, because Pascal Siakam potentially signs a deal for 4 years, that the right spot is not here from him, but for him. But I do think that the next couple of years and how they manage that with guys like Andrew Nemhard and guys like Jarris Walker and Benedict Mathurin, I mean, good problem to have here, but a probable real challenge is, as long as they run it back with those guys, is finding minutes for all of them to go along with Halliburton and to go along with Siakam and to go along with Nesmith and Turner and T.J. McConnell. I mean, the Pacers have a ton of depth, and they had a ton of depth in the playoffs without Mathurin. So I do think a real challenge and good problem to have again is trying to figure out how to get all of those guys the minutes necessary to see what they are and the type of development you would like. I think that's where you fall back on the fact that you've got Rick Carlisle here and a future Hall of Fame head coach and a coaching staff that has as much experience behind him as any assistant staff in the league, and you trust them to get that right. And, I think it will be one of the more interesting storylines if this roster is more or less intact, where positionally those guys end up, where they are in the rotation, what kind of minutes are they getting starting the 24-25 season.
TV voice of the Indiana Fever and sideline man for the Pacers Radio Network, Pat Boylan, is our guest. He joined us on the CarX Tire and Auto guest line. Pat, going back to the WNBA real quick, there have been legends, icons of the sport long before Caitlin Clark, Diana Taurasi, Tamika Catchings, Cheryl Swoops, Maya Moore. There have been plenty of examples throughout the sport of icons that have held variety of different hardware, championships, MVPs, all WNBA teams, etc. But we knew going into this process, with ratings being shattered collegiately for the women's Final Four national championship game, echoing and in some instances surpassing that of the men's tournament this past year, we knew the level of, to borrow some of the theme that Jake has thrown at Eddie today, we knew the level of Beatles mania that was surrounding Caitlin Clark and what was going to arrive with her when she began her career in the WNBA. But as we mentioned earlier, you're having now a ton of voices that weren't previously discussing the WNBA doing so on national platforms, on debate shows, and it's becoming part of the vernacular, which in itself is great for the sport. But from your seat, to some extent, with all that's happened, the questionings of fouls and the level of aggression of her being targeted as a player, of all the other debates of her value as a player and other nonsense that's gone on, was the sports world and the WNBA to some extent underprepared for just how big this thing was going to be?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is probably yes, just because you've never seen anything like it, and this is really the first foray into it. And as I kept going through the week, and I'm watching like you guys are on Tuesday, and it's on First Take, and I'm like, man, this play happened 4 days ago. But the word that just kept coming to me that I think we are lacking so badly that is necessary here is nuance. And there's so much that goes into this in the conversation you ask. And I think on one hand, the WNBA regularly being on these talk shows and regularly being a part of, frankly, your guys' conversation, the morning show, JMV, what you guys do. Like,
Pat, I heard two guys at a bar the other day talking about Caitlin Clark and the Fever. Like, I wasn't talking to them. I just overheard the conversation. Like, it's crazy.
No question. And no question that's good for the league. And hearing you guys talk about the Fever when they're winning or when they're losing and discussing all of that beyond just Kennedy Carter's hip check, like that's fantastic stuff for the Fever and the WNBA. There's just – we're lacking nuance in all of this. Like there are so many – multiple things can be true. There has never been a player that's come into the WNBA with anywhere near the spotlight of Caitlin Clark. The Fever are going to play tonight in Washington, and I'm almost positive that by the end of the night, the top 10 attended games, home and road, in the WNBA this year are all going to involve the Indiana Fever. They're playing at their bigger arena, and I'm sure it will sell out. And that is all you need to know about Caitlin Clark's impact, and there's nobody else in that conversation anywhere near her level that's causing that. At the same time, that does not mean that Angel Reese isn't a part of the growth. Of course she is. It's just not at the level of Caitlin Clark. It's not even close, frankly, but that doesn't mean she's not a positive impact on the growth of the league. It doesn't mean that there weren't already great players in the WNBA. Of course there are. Brianna Stewart and Asia Wilson are going to get so many new eyeballs on them and so many new fans, and I think that's one of the real exciting things to me about all of this. And if Caitlin Clark was playing in the NWSL, the WNBA was already on an upward trajectory with its ratings and would continue to do so. But she has turbocharged all of this. She has brought a massive, massive spotlight to all of this. And to suggest anything less would be, in my opinion, wildly inaccurate. And I think she has done such a good job of handling all of this, of navigating it all. Every single time she throws it back to the whole rookie class, she throws it back to the legends of the league. She deflects. She's just a master at age 22 of handling all of it. All frankly things that she didn't ask for, but she is dealing with. And to not understand the spotlight that she brings and the impact that has on the Fever, on the city, on the WNBA, on the sports landscape in general, I think would be very misguided. And I look forward to the day where you're watching First Take and you're seeing conversations, even though they're mind-numbing to me, similar conversations about goats of the game. And if the early Comets could beat this version of the Las Vegas Aces, that's not the kind of conversation I enjoy listening to. But when the league gets to that point, it'll be a huge step forward. So I could talk the rest of your show about this, and let's not do that. But at the end of the day, I think there's so much more positive than negative that needs to come out of this. And I've just been disappointed at some of the negativity that's come from it. And there's been a lot of bad faith actors, people that don't care about the WNBA or sports and have no interest in it, that have been trying to use this past week to their own personal advantage and to push whatever narrative they're trying to. But in general, look, the WNBA is in a massive spotlight right now. Caitlin Clark's the biggest reason why, and that's absolutely fantastic for the league and for our franchise.
Speaking of goats, I've always wanted a pet goat. Pat, you like goats? Goats are cool, right?
I'm not anti-goat.
Like when I get my 7 rescue dogs, 1 cow, I think I'm going to add a goat.
Might as well get a partridge in a pear tree.
My ranch in Wyoming. You know the best thing about my 7 rescue dog, 1 goat, 1 cow ranch in Wyoming in my retirement, Pat? You know the best thing about that for you, Eddie and Jimmy?
I would love to hear.
No one will ever hear from me. That's the part where
your goat.
my Billy, my goat, and then Cow, my cow. My cow's gonna be named Cow, and then my 7 rescue dogs, and then Shannon will filter through. If you need to get a hold of me, if you still have her number, you can get a hold of her.
Boo the cat will have discovered immortality by then. So
that's right, and I'm just gonna be hanging out. Fever, and it is the Mystics tonight, correct? 7:30.
That is correct. It's on Ion tonight. We cannot broadcast it. Our next broadcast will be the game in Connecticut, which is coming up a few days later. So
if you were broadcasting that
this year, but for good reason.
So, Pat, you're not broadcasting this game, right?
Correct. No, I'm in Indianapolis. I am less than a mile from you guys.
Think about this. If you were, you would be able to say Ion, Ion. It's kind of cool, right?
I thought you were going to say "Here Comes the Sun"
fun.
Because they're on the horizon here for us.
Nice.
And also a Beatles
like
song.
it.
Thank you very much.
The Connecticut Sun is up next. That's right. Okay, the winless Mystics tonight. We appreciate it as always, Pat.
Thank you, gentlemen. Likewise.
Pat Boylan, who is shaking his head as he is jumping off of the
Palm's got
Corex
to be in the
Tyrant
face
auto
too.
guest line.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm just telling you, Washington is 0-10 though, right? And he's right. The schedule's been pretty daunting for the Fever.
I believe that's 0-10.
Oh no.
Okay. Or 0-10, as most normal people would say, right?
Agreed.
0-10, yeah.
Both are correct, but it's like the red arrow. People know what you're talking about. Just the sign works perfectly sufficiently. Are you wacky on the junk back there, or do you have allergies? What's going on with your eyes?
It's probably all the spotlights that are on me, Jake. I've become a hot commodity.
Are you the Caitlin Clark of the program here? All the spotlights on you?
Not quite there yet.
Good news is the microphone's working again. That's the good news. Bill Polian going to join us just about 25 minutes from now. Dallas Clark in the Ring of Honor. Bill Polian, the guy that drafted him. We go from one Clark to the next, I guess you'd say. Squarey Company here on a Friday, and a feel-good Friday. That's an hour away.
The celebration continues during Sullivan.
Here we go. Eddie Garrison, the verdict is in. We're doing this all day long, Beatles songs. Eddie has or has not previously heard the song. This one, Eddie?
It's tough. It's a good one. It's one of my favorites.
Let me tell you, folks, what's happening today on this program that I love. Today is June 7th, a day after the convoy began for C.W. McCall, and a day after my mom's birthday.
Did she have a good birthday, by the way?
She did. Well, I don't know if if my mom will be mortified that I'm mentioning something. She had a flat tire yesterday. Not my mom's fault.
On the
but she did
birthday
have
of
a
all
flat
days,
tire.
that's tough.
Was it your dad's fault?
It was not my dad's fault either. My dad was with me. My dad and I actually golfed yesterday.
Oh, darn. I thought you were going to say it
And
was his fault because he was trying to go look for a cat again.
No, my dad was golfing with me, and then it was literally, I was like George Costanza with my parents. It was a sitcom, because then my mom all of a sudden had a flat tire, and she's calling me, and my dad's in the car, and I'm like, Mom, we're on our way there. So regardless, but she did have a very good birthday.
That's good.
But on this, the 7th of June of 2024, I would like for the record to state
It's National Donut Day.
it is National Donut Day. And a reminder, when Colts camp at the end of the summer is underway, Quack Daddy Donuts is right there next to the Colts complex on by Graham Park, and is perfect to be able to go and get breakfast as you're on your way to go see the Colts. But this is also the first day since this show began. This show began when? What was our first day? Was it August 8th, something like that?
A little later than that, because the high school football season had just begun.
Okay. I
21st.
August 21st?
Correct.
I forgot. Eddie had to look at the tattoo that he's got on his ankle.
Yep.
So
he has one on his ankle too?
That's right. Yeah, there you go. So this is the first time since August 21st in doing the show that Jimmy finally understands what's known as generational gap struggle.
I do.
Because I can tell you don't want to throw your fellow Generation Y millennial under the bus, but I can tell that deep down you are like, wait a minute, for real? With Eddie's.
I am feeling it, but I also, like Pat Boylan had mentioned about himself, I also have cultural gaps. Like, for example, my dad, my late father, God rest his soul, was born in 1930, and my brothers and sisters were born around the same time Jake was, or earlier in some instances. And so, there's this gap of, Sinatra and, the Rat Pack and Ray Charles, and then I didn't grow up when my brothers and sisters were growing up, so, I wasn't as into a lot of, classic rock that Eddie loved, so there are definitely gaps for myself.
Well,
That's why
I'll
I try
tell you
not to
another
judge.
thing that happens. Eddie, do you have siblings, Eddie?
Both younger.
That's a huge, huge factor.
It's massive influence, right?
In your defense. Because, for example, when I do that road trip every year that I do with my buddy Mike Byron, when he forgets his wallet and
loses the keys.
I mean, it literally is a walking disaster. But we do the trip, and, we're in the car for hours upon hours. And we've gone from Albuquerque to here, Austin, Texas. We do a different place every year. And when we're listening to music or we're talking about stuff, there are so many things from our early childhood that I remember the exact year. I mean, I hear it and I'm like, yeah, that's 81. That's 79. I can boom, boom, boom. And he's like, it's all a fog to him. And it's in his defense, and at no credit to me, I'm the youngest of three. So as the youngest of three with two older sisters, and we moved to Indianapolis when I was about 2 months shy of my 6th birthday, but we had lived in Shelbyville and Evansville. So because I moved and had very clear, memory dividers of this house, that house, and then, here, but because I had older siblings, when I was 3 years old and my sisters were away at school for the day and I was home, I would listen to their records. I would put on their record player to pass the time waiting for them to get home. But also I was then dragged to, not dragged, I mean, I went, but, they had to drag me more so to not only their Little League games, but movies, watching television shows. I mean, I watched I can tell you everything that ever happened on Little House on the Prairie because I had two older sisters and they were in charge of the television, right? So I just sat and watched whatever they wanted to watch. So, Mork and Mindy and Little House on the Prairie, it is all very clear to me because I have because I have older siblings. And Jimmy, I think the same is true for you, right? You had people that were introducing you to things.
Sure.
And you have, in addition to that, you can recall milestones that they went through.
Correct.
And you can divide it in your years, even before your school years. Whereas Eddie, I'm assuming that like your memories up until your younger brothers and sisters were born, you know what I mean? You were just kind of, you didn't have anybody introducing you necessarily. I mean, your parents, obviously, but that's a little bit different in terms of just the entertainment aspect of it.
Yep.
But anyway, I don't judge, but that said, to your point, I do feel a little bit of the reverberation of it. I wish Eddie had a higher percentage on the Beatles, but that's okay.
Now, I think I mentioned this earlier, but yesterday somehow it came up organically on the show because, if anything, on this show, we like to be unique and organic. And we mentioned on the show Good Will Hunting, and Matthew and Maine last night went and saw it for the first, said, you know what, I hadn't seen it, and went and saw it. Now, Matthew said that the only part that confused me is Matthew said he didn't understand a lot of the jokes. I don't know that there are necessarily jokes in Good Will Hunting other than, do you like apples? That's really the only one.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's a, and perhaps that is a callback. If you go into that movie and you see Robin Williams as top billing, maybe you think it is going to be a comedy.
That's fair.
Perhaps, because he wins the Academy Award for his role in Good Will Hunting, and it's a very romance drama type film is the best way to describe that without giving away too much for Eddie over there. But it's a great film.
You know, the one thing about that movie that I don't know that I thought about until like recently when I was flipping the channels and it was on, and so I stopped to watch it. Whatever happened to Minnie Driver?
Good question.
Like Minnie Driver was the deal in that. Like that era was like, yeah, okay. And I think I saw recently she owns like a clothing company in New York or something. Is she even acting anymore?
She was.
I can't imagine
she was
going
in
into
the film. She was in a film called The Beekeeper in 2024. Was that the one that had Jason Statham in it? It was. Yeah, it was an Amazon. I can't remember if it was an Amazon or a theater film, but that was her most recent work. Was The Beekeeper? It was like an action revenge type movie.
I can't imagine just walking into some sort. Phoebe Cates also. Phoebe Cates owns a clothing store in New York City. You imagine just walking into, yeah, I'm just going to go buy some jeans, and you walk in, and there's Phoebe Cates. I'm going to go in the dressing room, but make sure you knock, would you? Thank you, Eddie. Eddie knows what I'm talking about. He's now an expert of the Fast Times at Ridgemont High phenomenon. Bill Polian, by the way, going to join us top of the hour.
Hey everyone, it's Jake from Payless Liquors. Charlie.
Eddie wasted no time on that one.
Thought we'd switch it up a little bit, try to beat you before the punch.
Jimmy, would you have gone with the buzzer or the ding?
Lyrically, I would have gone with the buzzer, but the tune, like that piano open,
Correct.
I would have gone with the ding because I feel like I've heard that before.
Fair enough. Waited no time on that.
That was great. Good on you, Eddie.
Thanks.
We have tickets to give away for the U.S. swimming qualifications for the Olympic Games. Prepare to qualify, right? That's what they're doing over there at the pool at Lucas Oil Stadium. This is for the 16th, which would be 1 week from this Sunday, the finals for determining those that will swim representing the United States in Paris. Now, Mitchell has been waiting on hold patiently for quite some time. Do we know if Mitchell's awake at this point?
Let's see.
Mitchell, are you there?
Yes, what's going on today, guys?
Mitchell, you win the Persistence Award. You've been on hold for over an hour. Are you working today, or what's going on in the life of Mitchell?
I am working, but I have an AirPod in all day, so I was good to go, just enjoying the show, listening, you know.
Now, be honest about this, Mitchell, because I very much appreciate that. I know you said you're listening. The part where you said you're enjoying, is there embellishment in that part of the statement?
Well, I'm a dedicated member to the company. I don't have a job yet, so I would like to receive a job today, if that's all right.
Okay. Well, what line of work are you in?
Cell phone world, basically. So
Okay.
we'll go that.
Wait,
Okay,
so are you the reason that our hotline keeps calling Jake? Do you have any solutions for him on that? Because
Yeah.
for some reason our hotline randomly calls Jake, but no
During
one
the
dials
show.
out. It's very weird.
There might be an inside source, but I can't get into details, Jake. I'm sorry.
Okay, Mitchell, here's the thing. Now, let me ask you this. If we were going to have our PBR party, Diet Cokes are perfectly sufficient. Would you come to the PBR party? Would you be willing to sit and hang out and have either a PBR or a Diet Coke while watching the Pacers or something like that?
Absolutely. PBR's fine. If it's a Diet Coke, it's got to be from McDonald's, though.
Okay.
Good
so
call.
Here's the thing, Mitchell. Because you work in the cell phone world, and I'm not going to ask the name of the carrier, but you are making sure that people are getting the best connection with their cell phone, correct?
Absolutely.
And you're also willing to go to the PBR party. So your job within the company is you're the director of bars. Is that cool?
Ooh, that sounds fantastic.
That'll look great on a business card.
That's
I feel
right.
confident
Just
in
put
that.
that on
I got it. Yeah, we'll put that on my business card now. So we're good to go on that.
Mitchell, you did you grow up in Indianapolis?
I'm just outside. I'm more north, though. I actually lived my life in Fort Wayne, to be honest with you. So,
What high school?
I actually went. Can you guess? You're pretty good at this. I'd like to know if you can
thank
guess.
You. Yeah, I will guess, Mitchell, and thank you for the vote of confidence. But I need to ask this: did you attend high school in the city of Fort Wayne or in the Fort Wayne greater area?
In the Fort Wayne greater area.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, did the name of your high school feature the name of a city and or a county in it?
Yes.
Okay. And does the name of your high school feature more than one word?
Yeah. Man, you might get this on the first try.
Okay, I'm going to go. My first guess here is I'm going to go with Columbia City.
Oh, man, you're close. You're real close.
All right, my next guess is going to be, not knowing the area totally, I'm going to go with West Noble.
You're too far there. Go south. Go south from Columbia City about 20 minutes.
So this would not. I'm trying to think of I'll be honest, man. The Fort Wayne area is one that I am.
The mascot is a Viking. Does that help you?
A Viking?
Yeah.
That would be. No, hold on. People are screaming at their car right now. Jimmy, help me out here. So you got Penn is the Quakers, right? But that's Mishawaka. Yeah. So now you're too far.
I can give you a hint, and I think this will give it away. But he played at a very well-known defensive player played for Huntington North for Purdue basketball. Sorry, I didn't mention that.
Wait, did you say Huntington North? Is that the school?
Ah, great. I ruined it. Never mind.
You know, when I think of Huntington North, I mean, obviously Dan Quayle comes to mind, but Sean Klein comes to mind. Who am I missing?
Oh, Sean Klein, Chris Kramer.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Same era, right? Basically same era. So
Absolutely.
Mitchell,
Well, yeah, a little bit.
and my apologies that I was thinking Huntington was. I didn't realize it was that far north. I was thinking Huntington's a little further south than that. And that's where the tenderloin sandwich was invented, right? In Huntington.
Yeah, Knicks. Yep. Better believe it.
Mitchell, would you like to go and watch people swimming at Lucas Oil Stadium as much as anything else for the anomaly of it?
Yeah, I'm gonna take my mom. She was an all-state swimmer back in the '80s, so she would definitely enjoy that.
That is very cool. Well, we're gonna hook you up with 4 tickets. So take mom and then take a couple other people from Huntington if you'd like, Mitch. But I appreciate the fact that not only are you
Jake,
keeping
real quick.
Yes, sir.
Can I get something from you? Because it's my favorite.
Okay.
Can I get the Summerlin Brit?
Here's the thing, Mitchell.
It's a great day.
Well,
to be
so,
on, Jacob.
Huntington, I know about Dan Quayle, but I've not heard about it since because I always went to Murphy Brown.
Potato. Nice. Love it. Love it. Every time.
Can we take back the tickets?
It's hard to do that.
Mitch, it's hard to do on cue, but we'll throw down a couple of pints.
There we go. All right.
Don't tell Kevin. He would be so mad at me.
All right, Mitchell. I appreciate it. Eddie will get your information. Bill Polian will join us on the other side.
The Ride with JMV.
You've never heard this song?
Nope.
One of the great Beatles songs. One of their number one hits. Speaking of number one, it was in round number one where the Indianapolis Colts in 2003 selected a tight end out of Iowa by the name of Dallas Clark, and one of the highlight reels that was shown on that draft night was an, I think, 80-yard touchdown against Purdue. And, of course, he would become a great player for the Colts and now into the Ring of Honor and making a return appearance on the program. The guy that drafted Dallas Clark also drafted some of the other names in that Ring of Honor. That goes without saying. The former Colts president, Bill Polian, joined us on the show. Bill, how are you?
Good, Jay. How are you? I'm glad to be with you.
Well, I'm happy to have you on. And, again, I think that it's interesting when players get this kind of an award, whether it be the Hall of Fame, or in this case, the Colts Ring of Honor. I know that ultimately it is an individual honor for the player, but from the executive level, you have to take a tremendous amount of pride in it, because with any pick that you get, it's going to be scrutinized. It certainly is a validation of your selections, but also I think just being able to see the growth of players from wide-eyed young guys to, players that come back for this sort of an honor. So your reaction in hearing that Dallas Clark will join you in the Colts Ring of Honor?
Well, gratitude on a lot of fronts. Number one, that I had the opportunity to draft him. Number two, that I was fortunate enough to be around and see all that growth and development that came in Dallas. And then finally, gratitude to have him as a teammate, because if you looked in the dictionary and looked up the definition of great teammate, you'd see Dallas Clark's picture there. So very thankful to have had the opportunity to draft him and work with him for all those years, and very thankful for all he did for us.
To go and talk about the aspect of teammate with Dallas Clark, Bill Polian, and Bill Polian joining us on the CarX Tire and Auto Guest line. Dallas Clark is a guy that grows up in Iowa. His mother passed when he was a young guy. I think that had a great influence on him. But one of the things about him is he just seemingly had this nonstop motor and work ethic and selflessness about him, and maybe that was driven by trying to make the people around him proud as a young person because of that. How much of his background did you even know about when you drafted him, and how much did that parlay into the player and teammate that he became?
Well, we knew a great deal about him, and two things stood out. Number one, his character, and having gone through what he did as a young person. And secondly, his work ethic. I believe he was a walk-on originally, and one of more than a few walk-ons that won us the Super Bowl, by the way. But that was important to us, because he went from a guy who didn't have a position and didn't have a job to an All-American and a first-round draft choice. That speaks to his drive, his dedication, his work ethic, his energy. But more important, for a guy who overcome lots of obstacles in his life, more than most, he didn't have a chip on his shoulder. He wasn't angry at the world. He was, if anything, thrilled to have the opportunities that he did. And you saw that every day, every single day.
Bill, for Dallas Clark, when he's selected, at the time, Iowa was not what it is today in terms of the reputation of a revolving door of high-level tight ends. You've had guys like T.J. Hawkinson and most notably George Kittle that have come out of that just factory of tight end production. When you selected Dallas, and you admitted it towards the back end of his time at Iowa, he puts together, I think, something like 1,200 yards over his final two campaigns with the Hawkeyes. When you selected him, did you know that you were drafting the tight end of the future for your franchise, that he would have the type of 10-plus year career that he wound up having? Absolutely. No question about it. We knew. There's a great story, if you'll indulge me with it. Jim Irsay came in the Thursday before the draft. The draft was on Saturday and Sunday in those days, and said to Tony and I, who are we looking at in the first round? So Tony said, we got a defensive end from Colorado, that Tyler Brayton that we're high on, and a tight end from Iowa named Dallas Clark. And Bill can fill you in on Dallas, and I did. And I said, this is our tight end of the future. This is the guy that's going to change the whole approach to our offense. And
Tony went on to talk about Tyler and what effect he thought he would have on the defense. And so Jim said, well, I trust you guys implicitly. Whatever you decide to do, I'm 100% behind you, and it's going to work out. And he left the room, and as he was leaving, he stopped in the doorway and he said, if I were you, I'd take Dallas Clark. And we all cracked up. And Tony said, I think I know who we're taking if he's there. and of course, the irony is that Tyler later came on and finished his career with us and was an important player for us. But that we were sold on Dallas Clark, no question about it.
At the time, and I want to make very clear here, this is obviously not meant as any sort of a slight towards these guys that were really good players and good players as you were continuing to rise in the early Peyton Manning era. But, you had Joe Dean Davenport, who I think was a really good blocking tight end. You had Marcus Pollard that was kind of that hybrid tight end. Both were good players. What was it about Dallas Clark that he brought to the table that was, in fact, different, that you felt like, okay, this is going to be a next level at that position for us?
Speed, explosion, dexterity, incredible hands, incredible run after catch. The film you're referencing was an incredible run against Purdue where he hurdled two blockers, two tacklers, literally hurdled them on the way to a touchdown. He had athleticism that we had not previously seen at the position, and he was really the first of the athletic tight ends to come into the league. And Dallas had one in the earlier years when they won Super Bowls. I can't remember his name right now, but Dallas was the next guy in line, and then of course the Kittles and the Laporters and all those guys followed suit. But he was the original article.
Novacek, would that be who we're thinking of in Dallas?
Novacek, that's who I'm thinking of. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Who you knew that if Novacek caught it over the middle, typically you feel sorry for guys catching the ball over the middle, and Novacek was one of those you feel sorry for the linebackers in the middle, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And by the way, Dallas was a much better blocker and a much more willing blocker than people gave him credit for.
And another guy, not to segue away from Dallas Clark, but I've always felt like Bill Polian, and you tell me if you agree with this, as great a player as he was, I've always felt like Edgerrin James didn't get enough credit for not only his willingness to block, but his ability to read and pick up anticipated blocks to protect Peyton Manning.
As good as I've ever seen. As good as I've ever seen in my career. And I was with Thurman Thomas in Buffalo. Edge was the best blocking back that I've ever been around.
Can
and
you
he was
tell?
Natural at it too, by the way.
Well, and that's the other thing is, how do you know in the process? What do you look for to make sure that a guy in the process is not duping you, if that makes sense? When you're talking to him and you're trying to get a read on a player's willingness, selflessness, can you tell if they're kind of smoke screening and just saying what an agent told them to say versus that it's truly in their character?
Well, we never put very much stock in the interview. We put great stock in what the head coach told us. Tony and I would always speak to the head coach prior to putting a guy on in a preferred position on the board, and then we relied almost totally on our psychologist to give us a read on what the young man is really like. She had all the backstory, all the stuff the scouts had gleaned, and then we matched that with what she saw in her testing and interviewing. She's a professional at it, and we are not. And then finally, what we saw on film and heard from the head coach. That's what made up the picture.
And with that, when you start to get, and I've always felt like the word culture, we throw that word around so much, but there probably is something to it. But once you have enough veteran players in your locker room that you truly like the character aspect and that part has paid off for you, does that allow you a little bit more leniency or gamble on younger guys because you feel like they're not going to be able to let the ugly side show through because the veterans are going to step in? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Well, it's a good question. the answer for us, it was just the other way around. When we had people like Dallas Clark and David Thornton and Gary Brackett and Peyton Manning and, keep naming them, in the locker room, Jeff Saturday, Ryan Lilja. I mean, I could go on for 10 minutes. We didn't want anybody that wasn't like them. We wanted that locker room to be homogeneous in their personal traits. They could be every race, creed, color, religion. It didn't matter. That didn't matter as long as they had the value system that we put so much stock in. That's who we wanted, and we turned down plenty of players who had more talent than those that we acquired. But Tony and I firmly believe that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
6-time NFL Executive of the Year and Colts legend and Colts Ring of Honor member Bill Polian is our guest on the CarX Tire and Auto guest line. Bill, you mentioned earlier when you knew in the process of the selection of Dallas Clark, and so often as you're building a franchise out, once you have that franchise quarterback, the pass catchers that you build along with said quarterback, you want there to be great level of connection and chemistry. How quickly or at what point in their tenure together did you realize that Dallas Clark and Peyton Manning were a match made in heaven?
About a week into minicamp when Dallas was a rookie. We could see it, and if I'm not mistaken, Peyton came up to me and said, "Well, you picked a good one here." I said, "Yeah, he's going to be fine," and they developed, of course, a phenomenal chemistry.
How hard is that specific position compared to others to get right? Because you see a ton of teams that do it either by committee or by situational, and there are fewer, I feel like anyway, elite level tight ends than there's ever been over the last 2 or 3 seasons. How do you find and how does it compare in terms of difficulty of finding an all-around great tight end?
Well, it's hard to find an all-around tight end in this day and age. And in fact, they don't exist because with the spread offenses, you have guys that basically are mini slots or in what we call the nasty split, where they would be 4 or so yards separated from the tackle. They're not asked to pass protect a lot. The run game is all zone blocking, so it doesn't require a lot of power. So the old time Fasano tight end, Mayer recently from Notre Dame, those guys are the hardest to find. The athletic guys are easier to find. They were not in Dallas's time, of course, because the role was reversed. But they're easier to find. But here's what's hard to find: work ethic, intelligence, character, and toughness. That's all hard to find. In fact, darn near impossible to find. You have to look very hard to get it. And when you find it in one player, you cannot let finances or analytics or anything get in the way of pulling the trigger. Laporta, by the way, who is another Iowa tight end who's done exceptionally well, many people say, "Oh, you can't draft him in the first round. That's too high for him. He's not he can't block." Well, if I'm in the first round, somewhere below 20, Laporta is my first pick because he reminded me a lot of Dallas. Those guys are hard to find, so you can't constrain yourself. When you find one that's good in every respect, pull the trigger, no matter where in the draft.
I'm curious about this. When you were doing drafts, did you ever have to kind of pull yourself away from typecasting guys based on the program they were coming out of? Because the reality is that, every player is different. Was it hard to not look at a guy and then automatically compare him to the precedent of other players that came out of that school that were still embedded in your mind and have to remind yourself that each guy's different?
Well, we realize that each guy is different. We put value on programs because the same people who signed Dallas Clark as a high school player shared our values. So there were programs around the country that if we had a prospect from that program, we knew that he was ready to play. We knew he was the right kind of person. And so, for example, I'll give you three names: Dallas Clark, Bob Sanders, Pat Anger, and I'm probably missing a couple along the line, because we knew if a guy did well in the Iowa program and had what it took to play physically in the National Football League, he was going to succeed, because nobody prepares people for the NFL as well as Iowa.
Yeah, that's a huge compliment to Kirk Ferentz, right? And just the program that he has.
certainly is.
And probably
Yeah,
why he's been
certainly
there
is.
a long time, for sure.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Bill, do you miss it? I know that you're obviously still very involved in the game of football, but in terms of being in the war room and looking over prospects and analyzing film and knowing that it's going to come down to the guy that your gut says is the guy, do you miss it?
Yeah, you bet. You can be out of it, but you never get fully rid of all the excitement and the fun of finding players and putting them in the right spot and team building. That's the fun part of the job, and that never gets old.
The part of our job that isn't fun, it probably does get old, but is reality, is that when there are injuries to key players, the scrutiny of it and trying to figure out whether or not it is or is not of concern. The Anthony Richardson yesterday coming out and saying that he was sitting out practice because he had soreness in the shoulder that he had surgery on, and that he's in month 5 of an 8-month timeline. Should we be concerned?
No, the operative sentence is, or phrase is, that he's in month 5 of an 8-month timeline. With shoulder injuries, I'm not a betting man, and I'm not really crazy about sports betting, to be honest with you. But if you were going to wager on a timeline issued by the doctors that is almost universally true, it's shoulder injuries. When they tell you 8 months, they mean it. That's basically what it takes.
I think we may have asked you this before when we had you on, and I appreciated the time when Dwight Freeney was elected into the Hall of Fame. But with Anthony Richardson and just this Colts team in general, have we seen enough body of work now to be able to definitively say that this is the guy that can take them in the right direction, or is there still football that we need to see from him?
Well, of course, there's still football that you need to see, but what you've seen is the same kind of character, the same kind of work ethic, the same kind of dedication and kind of teammate that we're talking about with Dallas Clark. He's made of the right stuff. The rest of it is finding a way to channel that incredible talent into success in the National Football League, and that can only come with experience. Don't forget, he played virtually only 1 year of college football. So he's got a lot of playing to do and a lot of learning to do. And unfortunately, the injury has set that back a little bit. But I think he's got everything you want in terms of intangibles in a quarterback, and the rest of it is just getting experience.
Bill, big picture NFL, zooming out, looking at the state of the league, and we discussed this a little bit earlier in the week. You've seen over the last, 5-7 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, the depreciation of salary that is given to running backs because general managers and teams have realized that whether it's a late round draft selection if you're looking for the right guy, or it's signing a on the cheap veteran to the position of running back, you can get still good returns on that and spend the money elsewhere. When you look at the state of the league, and we've seen a little bit of this already with the Chiefs trading away Tyreek Hill a couple of years ago and teams kind of moving away from big-time wide receiver contracts, do you think we'll ever reach a point where, much like is happening at running back, teams aren't willing to give the big paydays to wideouts like they've grown accustomed to receiving?
The answer is no, because we're more of a passing league. I think this salary analysis is, to say the least, incomplete because it does not take into account the value of the player. That's the hole in analytics. They don't think about human beings. It's just numbers. Is Christian McCaffrey a bad deal? He just re-upped. Of course not. Of course not. And so if you have a great player who changes games, who can make plays for you on his own that win games, then A, you have to take him wherever you have to take him. And B, with the running back position, the only thing that's valuable about the analytics is that they have short careers. They have shorter careers, and that's pretty obvious. They get contacted on every play. We mentioned that before about Edgerrin. They have shorter careers at the peak of their abilities than other positions. So if you would ask me what would I do, I would do exactly what the Panthers did a few years ago. Take Christian McCaffrey, get all you can get out of him, and as you approach the second contract, begin to say to yourself, what are the odds of injury here, and diminish production with the second contract. But the idea that you don't take a game-breaking running back like Saquon Barkley in the first round, I reject completely.
Bill, what is your – and I know obviously the relationship –
By the way, we did okay with two guys named James and his successor.
Hey, I'm telling you what, that's another one, by the way. I'll tell you two guys that I think have gone underrated in terms of – and I think fans here in Indianapolis are aware, but if you talk like nationally, the contributions for the teams that you have between Dominic Rhodes and Joseph Adai. I thought Joseph Adai was especially his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, and again, selflessness is what comes to mind for him. I thought he was tremendous.
Yeah, he was absolutely right. 29th pick in the draft, I think, and we felt fortunate to get him. And don't forget, MJD, I think, went in the very next pick. So those two first-round draft choices that became outstanding players. So I don't subscribe to the analytic theory.
Bill, what is your, and I know your relationship is good, but what is your level of interaction of late with Jim Irsay, and can you give us an update just on Jim Irsay's health and how he's doing?
Well, as far as I know, doing okay. That comes from texting with him on a relatively regular basis. But obviously I haven't talked to him in a while because there's been some difficulty. You know, he needs to get all the rest and recovery he can. But so far as I know, good. And he's going to present Dwight at the Hall of Fame. And so I'm sure that he's up to that. And that's a great sign. And I'm looking forward to seeing him there.
And will you be here for Dallas Clark's Ring of Honor induction?
You bet I will. If the good Lord willing, I'll be there.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We look forward to seeing you. I know that Colts fans will be looking forward to giving you the applause that they always give when you come out on the field. And then my prediction is Bob Sanders is the next one to go in. That's my prediction.
Well, I hope so.
And then we'll call and bug you again when that happens, right?
I'll look forward to it.
All right,
Thank
Bill,
you
we
very
appreciate
much.
it. Appreciate it very much. Bill Polian, the former president of the Indianapolis Colts. Interesting stuff there, and always a good conversation. And I like a lot of, especially the part about, like, when it comes to analytics, you got to know the person, you got to know the player. There's a lot that jived with, and certainly I've made no bones about it. I mean, when Bill Polian was here, I didn't always agree with everything about Bill Polian, but have a huge amount of respect and appreciation for his willingness to come on here and his candor and his insights since. It is a Friday, and I feel good about that conversation, but it's a feel-good Friday in general. And we have a great story about teamwork, talking about being a great teammate. We found one, and we're going to tell you about him next.
Getting quality employees to fill positions.
Vote is in.
I do not.
Man.
If you're just joining us, where have you been? We're playing Beatles songs, and Eddie is telling us then whether or not he's ever heard the Beatles song. So far, you've heard of 2 of them, right?
Yes.
I Want to Hold Your Hand was one, right?
Yes.
Yellow Submarine was another.
Yep. Yellow Submarine.
He has said All You Need Is Love is one that he's also heard before, but we haven't played it for him. But that would be 3 in total.
Fair enough. By the way, folks, it is a Feel Good, Good for the Heart Friday, brought to you by our friends at Franciscan. And just a reminder, Franciscan Health, title sponsor for the Back Nine Golf and Entertainment Back Nine Golf Outing with the Fan. Going to be taking place on July the 18th, just south of Indianapolis at Back Nine, which is a great venue. Things getting underway at 11, the doors open, and then at noon, golfing with Franciscan Health Foundation benefiting from this. So it's a great fundraiser. It's going to include silent auction items. We will be broadcasting live. JMV will be broadcasting live. You can either buy an individual ticket, you can get a bay, reserve a bay, whatever you'd like, available at 1075thefan.com. And the folks at Franciscan, this is actually where I met them last year at said outing, and they're fantastic. Not only are they fantastic just in terms of their foundation and the work that they do, but also keep in mind, the #1 heart program in Indiana for cardiology by Health Grades, #1 in Indiana for interventional coronary care and major cardiac surgery by CareChex, and they offer the affordable, and this is the big thing that I want to make sure that everybody's aware of, the affordable heart scan, just $49. You can self-refer, pay out of pocket, get a free heart health risk assessment with each screening. And if you're curious what that means, it's a non-invasive, essentially, check of your heart to make sure that the calcium and the buildup inside of your heart, your arteries they have the elasticity, for lack of a better phrase, to make sure that you are not in any sort of a cardiac risk. If you are over the age of 40, it's critically important, especially if you have family heart history or problems thereof, obesity, if you are a former or even, obviously current, but a former smoker as well. All of those things, I strongly encourage it, because as somebody who has been through a heart attack, I'm telling you, you don't want to go through it. And I love the fact that the folks at Franciscan are there to offer you the best care if you do, but to make sure that you are at a low cost and low invasive nature, being preventative to make sure that it doesn't happen for you anyway. But I would love for you folks to let me know your favorite stories of a feel-good story in your community, especially once the school year begins and kids are back playing youth sports and school sports. That's what we try to feature each and every Friday, to give you something to just say, you know what, that was a cool story. I'm glad I heard about it. Like the one that I found from Dinger Nation. Now, Jimmy, you've done a little play-by-play for baseball, correct?
I have.
Okay. And now, especially in today's day and age, not every, but a lot of kids are playing baseball, not just for their school, but for club organizations. Travel baseball is huge. It goes without saying. Dinger Nation is out of Florence, Alabama, and it is a faith-based prep baseball program that has 15 and under, 16 and under, 17 and under, and 18 and under kids on their rosters. And most of them are kids that are playing in addition to their school, but learning the principles about baseball in hopes of trying to advance their game, either for their local high school or get themselves recognized to be able to play play baseball beyond the age of 18. Now, the head coach for this organization is Jason Beckman. And Jason Beckman has a new player on the roster this year by the name of Jacob Prince. And Jacob Prince, when you go to the games, and I know this because this is courtesy of Lake Point Sports that put this out where I saw this story. It's very obvious when you go to one of their games that you hear Jacob Prince in the dugout, and he's loud and he's boisterous, but he's in a positive way trying to lift up his teammates. And you might say to yourself, this guy never gets in the game. He got him one time, I think, and got one at bat. So Jason Beckman, please explain how it came to be that Jacob Prince is one of the members of Dinger Nation.
His dad reached out to us back at the end of last summer. Was wanting to be part of a team. Loves baseball. Sister's a college pitcher. We run a fall league. Got Jacob to be part of it. Came out in the fall league, got him some at bats, and actually smoked one hopped the fence, and I couldn't tell you, the whole crowd just erupted from it. And it brought a different energy to everybody who was playing, so it was kind of infectious. He puts baseball into a little bit different perspective for everybody, and baseball's a fun game, and it kind of helps us remember that, hey, let's have fun when we're out here.
Now that fun that he has and that perspective that Jacob provides is this. Jacob Prince is on the autism spectrum. Born with special needs. You heard Coach Beckman there mention that he has a sister that plays softball, so he was around the game, but he was never able to find a team where he could get out there and play. So they gave him the opportunity, and his contributions come beyond just the box score. But most importantly, not only is he able to get in there in the batter's box, for example, and take an occasional swing in batting practice, but also simply to start feeling like a part of something. Here's Jacob.
And I want to tell you, it's an honor for Beckman to have me on the team and these coaches to give me this energy and to bless me. And the Lord found me a team. The Lord gave me the team.
Now, and by the way, it is Price. My apologies. I couldn't read my own writing for a second there. So Jacob Price. Jacob's attitude, his demeanor, his approach, and his gratitude is something that is good for the other kids playing for Dinger Nation. You're talking about 16-year-old kids that sometimes perspective is important, and that perspective does have impact on his teammates.
I need to be more grateful and appreciate the reps that I have, because the reps that he has, he doesn't get as much as I have, but he takes it really serious, and he loves it every single second of it.
For the players at Dinger Nation, they're trying to advance their game. They're trying to become a member of a college program or maybe secure themselves into the varsity spot in their high school program. But for Jacob, it's also about finding a way to belong, but not necessarily in the future, but simply enjoying the fact that he belongs right now.
These are my teammates, and I love them. I wouldn't trade 1 minute for them, and I wouldn't trade nothing from them. And these teammates make me feel like family.
How about that? And that's what baseball's all about. That's what sports is all about. Feeling like family and taking somebody that just that little moment of being kind to somebody, making somebody feel like they belong, making them feel like they're a part of something is incredibly important. And it doesn't take a lot to do it, but it can make a huge difference, as it does right there, as you heard, for Jacob Price, to allow him to feel like he is, as he is, a part of something that now is impacting his teammates as well. So, thank you to Dinger Nation, and thank you to Lake Point Sports for getting that out and letting us know more about his story on Feel Good Friday.
If you would like to catch the entire interview that they did with Jacob and his teammates and his coach, you can go to our Twitter account, query_company. We retweeted that. In case you are interested in figuring out the entire story. It's about 3.5 minutes long, and I highly recommend watching that video.
It's pretty cool, right?
It's awesome.
I mean, it's very cool. And, you know, you see something like that, and to me, when you watch the story, it's even less about, well, obviously Jacob's the focal point of it, but when you hear the other teammates being interviewed, I mean, the reality is that the majority of kids that are playing high school sports, youth sports, travel sports for that matter, they're not going to make it ultimately to the big leagues. But sports is supposed to be about learning principles, learning the values that, you know, teamwork, humility, work ethic. But I think such a big part of it, and a part that is lost for a lot of people, is just simply compassion. And, you know, you learn so much of that in sports because you see when you're on the field or on the court, whatever it may be, the areas that are a strength for you are weaknesses for a teammate. The area that are strengths for a teammate might be a weakness for you. And so you learn to see the different approaches that different people have to have in their everyday life. And for those young people to learn that at the age of 16 and learn it from Jacob, listen, Coach Beckman there, I mean, that's a brilliant coaching move, right? I mean, not only is he doing it because of the goodness of his heart to give Jacob an opportunity, but just to be able to have something like that has that ripple effect throughout the rest of the roster. That's ultimately what you're looking for, what you're asking for. Very cool. Very cool. And Eddie, thank you for putting that on the timeline so that people can watch the whole thing, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. And thank you to Franciscan Health as well. By the way, when we go to now the Back Nine Golf Outing, last time that we did this, I had to go there and shoot a couple of the promotional videos to promote our golf outing last year, and I had never before even touched a golf club. I'm not saying that I'm good, but I think now at least I'm passable. I'm not going to totally humiliate myself when I go out there this year. Chipping's still a bit of a challenge. Are you a golfer, Jimmy, did you say?
I am, but I'm very bad. But I do love to chip, and my putting is solid, but the rest of it is trash.
Well, see,
we could just combine our skills together.
Correct.
Jake. We could make a super
First
golfer.
2 shots, I'm good. But, what do they say, right? Like, drive for show and putt for dough, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
Yep.
the chipping part, to me, that's the hardest part because it goes 2 feet or like I almost decapitate people on the green.
Sure. I've done the same myself. It's part of the game.
You've decapitated someone, Jimmy?
Well, I guess that is.
The touch is a bit of a challenge for me, right? Yeah. We
It wasn't a
we got
clean
the
cut.
lopper over here, right? Stay away. You see, Jimmy. No, listen. Jimmy's not going to be hurting anybody when we get to our golf outing on July 18th. 1075thefan.com, the website.
A lot of what I'll be doing, and again, this will be rolling at 11 a.m., then officially being kicked off at noon on July 18th. But a lot of what I'm going to be doing, whether it's in between shots or if I'm just hanging out with listeners and fans of the fan, enjoying the breathtaking scenery and the backdrop of the back nine, because you get one of the best views of the city at their location. It's
a
awesome.
great location. I mean, we got, you're going to have food there. The official, Jack Daniels is going to be there as the official drink. The shop is going to be there. They just said that they
shop.
purchased. It's the best. You kidding me? They purchased a bay, they said, and they will be there. The shop will be there, which is fantastic. We need to collaborate on a Why Not Indiana shirt. Maybe one for the playoffs with the old Indiana script on it from the Pacers.
I like it. But,
trademarked.
That's what I'm saying. Is you might need to negotiate with the shop because it's a trademark. Okay, all right.
Those guys are the best.
I love the guys at the shop, but I just want to make sure
Brian.
you as a trademark holder that you're getting your fair cut if you're using your trademark. That's all I'm saying.
Listen, those guys are the best.
All right.
What's your favorite shop T-shirt? I think mine may be, and I have an Indianapolis Chiefs that I got there, which was an old hockey team. An Indianapolis ABCs that I got there, which is fantastic. A TP, I've got a ton of them.
I have an IU shirt that borrows a lyric from the fight song Indiana Our Indiana, Never Daunted, and it has the old bison on it.
Yep, that's a good one.
I think that's probably my favorite. I also have, I believe this is, because I believe they've partnered with restaurants locally. I believe my St. Elmo's t-shirt is also from the shop. I need to double check that, but I believe I'm right on that.
Marsh is a good one.
Yep.
Hooks is a good one. I think the next one they need to do, but it would have to be for May, and it would be pretty limited production. But when I know this from doing Beyond the Bricks with Mike Thompson, there was a lunch meat company in Indianapolis, primarily in the 50s and 60s, called Stark and Wetzel. And they advertised the heck out of the Indianapolis 500 back in the day. Sid Collins must have done literally, I don't know which he did more, like say the name, Andretti or Stark and Wetzel. But Stark and Wetzel closed in 1977. It was an Indianapolis-based, like Oscar Mayer or any of the other snack or lunch meat places.
Sure. I'm shocked that your favorite shirt there isn't Jake's.
Yeah, Flaky Jake's, you mean? Well, they have both, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do have a Flaky Jake's from there, which is good. Here's the problem, though. Being named Jake is cool. Jake's Bar in Bloomington was cool.
That was one of my dad's favorite spots to go, by the way, back in the day.
But then Flaky,
It's
right
tough.
at the age, where it's nicknames come about, you got Flaky Jake, and then you throw in Query on the backside of that, and but I was always bigger than everybody else. It didn't really matter.
Bigger than everyone
Well, I mean, I
else.
was the tallest kid in the school. Nobody's going to mess with me, right?
I think my other dark horse favorite shirt that I more have as a bit now, because the guy that coined the phrase is no longer there, but I plan on breaking it out again during the football season. The last IU football game I went to, I bought, it was a shop licensed shirt that they had at one of the setups there at Memorial, was a IU red helmet with the old school kind of, kicker single bar.
Right. Yep.
LEO in the front.
Nice. Not Elio Castroneves,
No,
but the three letters.
LEO.
That's strong.
They do have a lot of cool vintage Indy 500 t-shirts.
Oh,
yes,
the
they do.
best.
Yep.
I mean, that's actually probably my favorite one. Is the 1987 Indianapolis 500 logo one is probably my favorite, because that was just such a cool 500 year. I was in the 8th grade. I won a full size candy bar from Mrs. Shadio because Al Unser Sr. won the Indy 500, and that's who I picked, or I drew his name out or whatever. It was just awesome. Everything about it. But I was a Roberto Guerrero fan.
I've noticed something with you that I don't think Jimmy and I do. Whenever you reference a grade, you always say, I was in the 8th grade.
As opposed to I was in 8th grade?
Yeah.
It's a good point. Yeah, I don't know why that is.
I've heard it both ways. I've heard people like,
Can you name every elementary school teacher you had, kindergarten through 8th grade?
oh, man. No, I would probably miss some. I'd come close, but I'd probably miss some.
You ready for this? You ready for this?
Okay.
I'm ready.
Hanoi, Placharzik, Fiedler, Mormon, Ritchie, Umamura, and then 6th grade middle school. So I'd have to go through, but I can tell you the order of my schedules also if you need me to, but I won't do that.
Schutz, Brown, Schultz, Meyer would have been K through 3, and then Ross was 4th.
5th?
Riley.
Okay. Not bad. Eddie?
6th was
should
Ross
know
again.
this.
7th was Bowles, and 8th was Ryan. There you go. K through 8.
So you obviously went to
St. Jude Elementary. It was K through 8. Yep.
You're gonna put me on the spot, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Do you
let's
remember
see.
where you went to elementary school? Eddie?
Yeah, Valley Mills Elementary.
Valley Mills Elementary?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went there 1st through 4th grade, and then to the DELC, which is called the DELC. Was there for 5th and 6th, and then 7th and 8th was at the middle school, and then high school.
All right, 1st through 4th.
I'm trying to remember.
I mean, it was like 10 years ago.
I know. I'm just trying to remember 2nd grade for right now. I know 1st. I think
The
first
show
was,
ends at 3.
Okay,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
1st was Greenrich, 2nd Lamar. I think Reedy 3rd, 4th Day, 5th was Thomas and Liffick. 6th was Minor, and then I could get into the 7th and 8th in high school, but
Yeah, but then you're into the individual classes.
Yeah.
Reedy, by the way, was the name of the secretary at Allisonville Elementary School. So some crossover there.
Shout out to the Raiders. Go
We'll
St.
come
Jude.
back and get Jimmy's plays of the day next.
Terry Stacy with your American Standard.
This is my way. This is how I win.
Today's plays of the day with an extended look as well to the weekend in the NBA Finals. We start first, though, with baseball on today's slate. We will take the Los Angeles Dodgers to win on the money line against the New York Yankees as they begin a 3-game set in the Boogie Down Bronx. A little bit later tonight as well, we will take the Baltimore Orioles, cute fella, to win on the money line over the Tampa Bay Rays. Last baseball bet for you. Give me the Redlegs, Cincinnati Reds, to win on the money line over the Chicago Cubs.
Well, that's good. That's good news right there. Fantastic news there, Jake.
In Game 2 of the NBA Finals, I'm sure there's reasons why. I'm sure it's money involved, but come on, NBA. Why are we waiting until Sunday for Game 2 when there's no travel involved? I digress. I'll scoop the 7. Dallas Mavericks are 7-point dogs as they trail 1-0 in the best of 7. I will take the Mavericks plus 7. In that same game, Kyrie Irving has to be better. He will be better. Give me over 22.5 total points for Mavericks star guard Kyrie Irving. Eddie Garrison, any plays for you today or through the weekend?
I have one today. I'm trying to find. There it is. I'm taking under 2.5 runs in the first 3 innings between the Reds and the Cubs. Reds have struggled against lefties. Shoto Imanaga, not on the mound today, but he is tomorrow. But Justin Steele, also a southpaw for Chicago. The Reds have struggled against southpaws, and I trust Nick Lodolo to have a solid outing against Chicago. So under 2.5 through the first 3 innings, Reds, Cubs.
Those are your plays of the day. Okay, we got one more.
I do. Yeah, it's a bonus.
At the window.
A bonus play
Just
of the
before
day.
post. All right.
I'm betting 1.5 to 1 that given the weekend, Eddie still can't name his 8th grade teacher.
8th grade? Yeah.
The over-under
I can
of
name my
5
Homer.
of number of remaining Beatles songs that Eddie's heard. Right?
Oh, man.
I
You said the over-under of 5?
I would smash that under, baby.
I would hammer the under.
How about Rolling Stones? If we do Rolling Stones on Monday, Eddie.
Ooh, that'd be a fun one. I've probably heard some of their songs.
I would think. That was a great concert when they were at the Speedway back in, that was like 2016, I think. John's up next. He is at Wolfie's, is that right?
Yep, in Noblesville.
John is at the Noblesville Wolfie's. Still plenty of time to get up there and enjoy a cold one. Diet Coke's perfectly sufficient. And listen to John's show. We are back with you at noon, of course, on Monday, Road America. This weekend, if you are going to be there for IndyCar, be sure to send me a text or a tweet. I'll come by your campground, steal one of your beverages and a turkey leg. John's up next. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.
93.5 and 107.5.